Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another 3 Point Weekly stream. Today, we're going to be discussing the Damian Lillard trade rumors that very much affect myself and Gabe as Toronto Raptors fans. And we know Gabe has some thoughts on that after he has been pushing Pascal Siakam to Portland earlier in this offseason. We'll also be discussing some of the rumors about Buddy Hield, as he is now rumored to be out of his way of Indiana, as he looks to not be signing a new contract there. And we will be then finishing that off with a 2018 NBA redrafted draft that was most headlined by that Luka Doncic for Trae Young trade, despite the fact that DeAndre Ayton and Marvin Bagley were those top two picks. So we will get to that. But we have to start with these trade rumors first. We'll start with the camp of Buddy Hield and the Indiana Pacers. It has come out now in the past week that it sounds like Buddy Hield is not going to be returning to the Indiana Pacers, whether it be an offseason trade, whether it be a pre-deadline trade. We'll see how that works out, but he's not going to be there long term, and they don't seem to be in a position where they want to let him walk for nothing, as they shouldn't, given the fact that they are still, although competitive, in a bit more of a retooling and rebuilding stage. So I'll get your thoughts first, Reek. What do you think about Buddy Hield moving on, and where do you think he potentially moves on after he does get traded from Indiana?
Yeah, it seems like it's something that kind of came out of left field. Like we were just having a discussion a week ago, talking about who's starting between him and Ben Mathurin, and now it's like it kind of came out of nowhere. He's somebody that obviously every contending type team would want on their roster, just because he's one of the best 3-point shooters in the league. He's been that since the day he stepped into the NBA. Like he's just so elite from downtown, which is why I was kind of excited to see him with this Pacers team because they're a team that we expect to be exciting this season, maybe make a playoff push. But a lot of teams are going to be after him. I saw like the Milwaukee Bucks were taking a look at him. My Celtics were taking a look at him. I would just expect any team that's in that contending realm to at least throw their name in the hat, see if they could snag Buddy Hield, because he's a type of role player that could change a team from being on the cusp of a championship to really making him like a serious championship team, just because of his elite skill set as a 3-point shooter. So it might take some time though, because we're just getting like training camps about to start and stuff. We're a month away from the season, so it might not happen right away, but definitely something that we can keep our eye on, especially like when the December 15th deadline comes and guys that were signed in the offseason can be traded. I'm sure that's when talks maybe will ramp up a little more.
Yeah, he puts himself in a weird position because I feel like he kind of fits anywhere. And that is why it's like when you're trying to predict what team he goes to, there's not really a set answer because you look at any team and I don't really have one set situation where I'm like, yeah, that's the one where I really see him working out. And it's just kind of the nature of being that consistent, reliable shooter. Like really anywhere with a good playmaker to get him the ball, I think he's going to be a good fit. And that's a lot of teams if we're being honest. I will say when it comes to the Indiana Pacers, I think there's pros and cons to this. In the short term, I definitely think it hurts them because I think this was going to be their breakout season. I think this is where they were going to go from a team who's been kind of on the rise in the midst of a rebuild, but acquiring talent to a team who was going to be back in the playoffs this year. And not saying they can't still do that, but having a guy who's been in the league for a couple years now would have helped that. A guy with a very consistent skill set, a guy who you can rely on to give you the same production night in, night out. That would have been really nice to have. But on the other hand, and when we're talking about this starter battle between him or a Ben Mathurin, now if we know they're going with Ben Mathurin in that spot and he's going to be starting next to Tyrese Halliburton for the whole season, when it comes to the long-term outlook, that's only going to further their development. And I think when you're looking at just this year versus the next 5 to 10 years, it's probably better that he's out of the way and you're just having as many minutes with this combination of Tyrese Halliburton, Ben Mathurin, and even Andrew Nembhard with one of those two guards. Having those guys all playing together, building their chemistry, continuing to win together and progress together as a team, I think is only going to help their chances. And even just in lineups, just having even their front court players playing with these guards who are going to be around long term, building that team for the future is probably the best long-term outlook for them, even if it might cost them some wins this season.
Yeah, I like that point, Gabe. It's definitely a move that sets them better for the future, puts them in a situation where those guys are going to play together more. And reality of the situation is Buddy Hield is just likely never going to be around once they were that competitive of a team. They would still be good over the next year or two, or maybe even 3 if he re-upped for a couple of years. But at their best, Buddy Hield was never going to be on this roster. But Tyrese Halliburton very well could be. So could Ben Mather, and hell, even Newmark could be at this point. So a lot of those guards are going to start to get their minutes, and they're going to likely get more young assets back for this, whatever it may be. It might be a couple of seconds. It might be a first. It might be a young player. Whatever it may be. There's a few different ways it could go, but it's going to be some amount of future assets, which for a team that is still not very far from trading away Domantas Sabonis, from trading away Malcolm Brogdon, continuing to bring in more young assets is only going to be more of a positive for them. Like we said, he could go a lot of places, but team that he's been talked to go to a lot over the past 12 months is the Lakers. This is the type of trade that is possible, and here's more young assets. Get a couple of picks. Maybe you get a Jalen Hood-Schifino, another young asset guy who you can bring in and just continue to bring in more assets to this young team. They're not going to get anything amazing from Buddy, but Buddy's not around long term. If they don't want to pay him or he doesn't want to stay, then that's another valid option. Raptors is another team he's been rumored to. There's just more assets they can bring in, right? So I think it's a win-win situation for them here in the long term. Like you guys said, this year it probably hurts the win total a little bit, but in the long term, they're going to get to further the development, and they're probably going to get a few more young assets out of it as well.
I don't hate that Laker trade. And if the Lakers were able to do that, that's a stamp type move. Like, this team, if healthy, can win a championship for sure. Just adding somebody of Buddy Hield's caliber so LeBron can play off of, that's just an elite floor spacer that they kind of need and they could desperately use. And even if you have to give up Vando, even though he just signed the extension and everything, I think because we saw in the playoffs, he went from being in the rotation to not being in the rotation a few times in all 3 of their series, right? So he's somebody that when it gets to that point in the season, they know how to play without. And I would probably rather have that floor spacing that Buddy Hield can provide. So I don't hate that trade at all for both sides, really, because Vando going to Indiana, we just talked about last week. Dev, you've been stamping on it all offseason how poor their forward position was last season. So adding a Vando would be great. And then Jalen Hood-Schifino was a lottery projected guy, for a lot of teams. So that would be just another young guard that you can bring into the mix, play off of Halliburton, play off of Nembhard, Ben Mathurin. That would be a nice little guard rotation to move forward with.
Yeah, I think for the Lakers, regular season wise, doing something centered around Vanderbilt for Hield is probably more of a lateral move. But really, when you mention that playoff time and how Vanderbilt really got played off the court, it's you can really only go up because say even Buddy Hield had some crazy shooting slump and he ended up getting played off the floor. At that point, it's still a lateral move. And nothing else they gave up was really that much of value. So I think it's a low risk, high reward situation, if anything. Now that Raptors trade, y'all know how I feel. I want the Raptors to go into that rebuild. So I do not want to be trading for a Buddy Hield. Even though they're not really getting off of young talent to do that in that mock trade. But either way, if they're getting off of pieces, I would rather it be for a young player or picks or just some sort of future type asset rather than a player like a Buddy Hield. But with that said, if that was a trade in addition to a possible Damian Lillard trade that could be on the horizon, that's a different conversation. Now, how I feel about that trade, we will discuss a little bit later. But I want to say if you do that Buddy Hield trade with the current construction of the Raptors roster, I'm not with that. Because like I said, a team that gets Buddy Hield, I think should be a team that has a good playmaker to get him the ball. That's going to be when he's the most effective. The Raptors are not really that team. They don't have that star-level playmaker. The Lakers, on the other hand, they do. It's LeBron. And, when it comes to driving, kicking to shooters, he's done it for 20 years, and I know he could do it with Buddy Hield.
Yeah, no doubt about it. But like you guys said, we'll see where Buddy goes. There's a lot of places he could end up. The Cavs could be another team that end up calling if they can figure out the assets. We know how much they need a shooter. So there's a lot of teams that will be calling for Buddy Hield over the next few months, assuming he doesn't get traded before then. But We will get to what you discussed, Gabe, in that potential Damian Lillard Raptors trade, because we've been hearing way too much about it the last week. It seems like that's, for some reason, been the most heavily rumored team for Dame over the last week or so. What that package looked like, who knows? But before we get to that, let's just get your thoughts first, Gabe, as a Raptors fan who has been pushing for that rebuild all offseason, as you've said. What do you think about a potential Damian Lillard trade, what that means for this year and what that means for the assets you'd have to give up to get him?
So I'm interested. You can't look at the premise of trading for Damian Lillard coming off arguably the best individual season of his career and not have any interest there, especially looking at a lot of the mock trades where you're not giving up a guy like a Siakam, some of which I think even keeps Scotty around, which I think is like insane. I think you can't look at that and be like, no, absolutely not. No way. Am I going to go out and say they're a premier title contender, a top threat to win the championship next season if they were to pull off a trade like that? No, I'm not going to say that. But what I am going to say is it puts them towards that level. And I definitely think at that point they're a top 4 team in this conference, maybe even top 3. Like, are the Celtics and Bucks probably still better? But even then, the Bucks are kind of on a downturn. But then you're competitive with pretty much anybody. I think the Celtics are like a level above almost everybody for like the next, like, we'll say 3-year projection. But other than that, if they made a trade like that, I don't see why the duo of Damian Lillard and Pascal couldn't be better than everybody else in that conference. And at that point, you need one lucky break and you're making a finals run. So with that said, like, I can't be too mad at that. It's just not the direction that I would have thought they would have gone. But also with Masai, he likes to compete. And so while I'm like, yeah, it's probably going to go towards the rebuild, probably going to go towards like just going towards like a youth movement, they don't want to do that. And I think this is probably the best case scenario for going in that direction. The only thing that makes it weird is if they do this trade and Scotty's still on the roster, I just think that gets really strange because here's a young guy that you need to develop, who you need to like put in a situation to grow and just progress as a player. And he's not going to be able to do that if you're competing for titles. Like, Dame is going to need a lot of the shots. Pascal's going to need a lot of the shots. If a Gary's still around, if an OG's still around, whoever would end up staying after any possible trade, like, these guys are still going to be taking a large portion of the shots and the touches. So it just puts Scotty in a really weird position. Like, why am I still – what are we doing? That's pretty much – that's a collection of thoughts.
Go ahead, Dev.
First, I'll just address Garrett in chat. Garrett's got some questions about Dame and Siakam being better than Halliburton and Jarris Walker. So
they know how I feel about Tyrese, man. But Dame is just a little smidge better.
Yeah, he's definitely got a bit of an edge over Halliburton, but it's a weird one. Like you say, we've both been pushing for a rebuild this summer, and I feel like there's only a couple of ways this goes, and everyone from a Raptors standpoint, fan base and front office, is relatively happy because, like you say, keeping Scotty around would be weird. It's a player who needs to continue his development, a guy who took a bit of a step back last year, but you would then be expecting to immediately be potentially a 3rd or a 4th option on a title contending team, depending on who gets traded away. Like, he would have to be a very productive piece at this point because we already know the depth is thin, and that's not going to get any better after a Damian Lillard trade. So keeping him is odd, but then at the same time, it also just seems like the Raptors front office is very reluctant to let go of him. It was no different last year in a potential KD trade from what we heard, and it doesn't seem like it's any different this time around, and you can't really blame them. But like you said, Gabe, what's the point of keeping him around if you are going for that title run over the next couple of years? So it's a weird dynamic to have going on right now. I think there's 2 ways that they can probably go with this. And these are the 2 trades I've cooked up that they might end up going with that probably keeps everyone happy and is probably the most that Toronto offer up. This is probably what they're looking like if they don't trade Scotty and they just screw all of the youth minus Scotty because Dick is gone, Achu is gone. Gary's gone and OG is gone. Your depth is screwed, but they keep Scotty, and that seems to be a really important sticking point right now for the Raptors front office. Will Portland accept not getting Scotty? I don't know. You got OG on an expiring, Gary on an expiring. I mean, even Achua's on an expiring. He's a restricted, but he's still on an expiring. So there's a lot of uncertainty going into that. The other option is if they just really value Scotty and you give them Scotty and nothing, and you just give them salary filler. And that's what that looks like. You end up having to throw a lot of bodies in. You probably have to throw pretty much all of your second round picks into this because the value is not great. But that's probably the two options that the Raptors are looking at right now. And they're probably not looking to do much more. I find it hard to imagine they're looking to entertain a Scotty Barnes and OG Anunoby and a couple other guys to fill salary type trade with a couple of first round picks. And the Raptors do only have those 2 first round picks to trade because of that Jakob Poeltl trade. That does offer up their protections on like next year's pick and the year after and the year after. So they're a little bit handicapped in that spot compared to last summer when they were in KD trades where they could offer up 4 or 5. So they're in an interesting spot. And ultimately, if I had to guess, I don't think anything happens because I don't think New Jersey is going to be willing to bend to get rid of Scotty. And I don't think that Portland's going to bite without it. But it's a really interesting development because I did not think the Dame trade talks when we were talking a few months ago was going to go from Miami to Toronto. Where he goes now, I don't know. I would not be surprised by any stretch if this is a large part in Miami or in Portland, just trying to get some amount of rumors out to try and get Miami to bite on a little bit more value. Not that they really have it, but I guess they can hope. We'll see where the negotiations end up going, but I think this is a lot more from Portland's standpoint, trying to get a little bit more value out of someone than it is him going to Toronto.
Yeah. Everything I just keep seeing out of Miami, it just pisses me off even more because it's like, oh, we don't want to give up this and this and this, but then it's like we don't have good enough assets to get Dame. Portland's standing pretty firm. Like they don't want just junk for Dame. Like they want actually good assets. So I don't know. Miami's confusing. I have 2 thoughts about the Toronto situation. I don't love it personally because like Gabe was kind of saying, like, does that really elevate them to being like a real contending team? Maybe not, but maybe like some luck would help them maybe get to that hump, depending on what you would have to give up. Because, like you just showed us, Dev, like one trade really makes the roster very, very thin depth-wise, and this is a team that's already lacking depth as it is. So, I don't love it, but it is picking a direction. That's what we've been preaching for the last 2-3 months is, can the Raptors please just pick a direction? That is picking a direction, and I can't say it wouldn't be fun to watch like Dame, Pascal, and whoever they keep. If it is Scotty, Gary Trent, like that could be a decently fun team that would make the playoffs and probably win a round or 2. Like that, I would sign up for that. Like to watch if I was a Raptors fan. I know you guys have been pushing for a rebuild. But if that's what you roll into next season with, or at some point next season, that's fine, because you would have a chance. It's just not like it's not that huge like needle moving trade. Like if Dame went to Miami, like that's a trade that's like, oh, this is a championship team for sure. So I don't know. I don't love it, but there's probably worse scenarios in the world for the Raptors next season.
Right. It's definitely a cash in. I think it's just like with some of those star level trades, like with if like propose one to Miami, it's like that's a contender already. They were just in the finals, and then you're just like really putting over the edge versus where I think a trade to a team like Toronto creates a contender, but it's not like an overwhelming favorite. And I think a lot of times recently with these star trades, we're used to it creating an overwhelming favorite, but like I don't know, like. And what your like opinion on that can really shift, because with a trade like that, like I don't think that's necessarily a problem, especially if there's still room to grow. Like if you give up everything and that's just what you have, then it's probably a problem. But if you give up like some stuff and you still have some other options to continue to improve that roster, then I think there's some stuff you could do there, because Say they get through this trade and they trade for Damian Lillard and they don't give up Scotty Barnes. Now you have Pascal Siakam and Damian Lillard, and say you flip Scotty Barnes in the future for a third star. Now, that might destroy the depth temporarily, but look at what Phoenix did. Now, is their depth still great? But I think most people still view them to be in position to compete for a championship. It's different because KD is probably better than any player that would be on this Raptors team. But, like, I think KD is probably better than any player who'd be on Miami as well. So it's an interesting situation to look at. I think the biggest thing is to actually get this done. I do think it's going to have to be a 3-teamer. Like when we're looking at mock trades, I've seen some that facilitate like Phoenix, which there was like this weird like Yusuf Nurkic thing. And it's like, why would anybody want Yusuf Nurkic? I don't think that's a smart decision at all.
Did you see where I don't know who said it, but they were like, the Suns want a defensive big, so Yusuf Nurkic.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Nurk hasn't played defense since he like broke his leg.
I don't think they know who Yusuf Nurkic is.
Like they're not familiar with his game at all. I'm like that doesn't make sense, bro. But
right,
unless they're just that desperate to get off of Ayton, which at this point I don't see why they would. Because even though I'm not the biggest Ayton guy right now, like I still think he's better than Yusuf Nurkic.
That's definitely not an upgrade. There was another 3-teamer that I'm like looking at now, and it involves like OKC getting involved in the deal. And I didn't hate it for like OKC's side, and I also didn't hate it for like Toronto's side, but it's like I feel like Portland gets a little shortchanged as they do in a lot of these mock trades. Right now, this trade that they proposed is Toronto gets Dame, Oklahoma City gets OG, and Portland gets Grady Dick, Lou Dort, Gary Trent Jr., and I think 3 or 4 picks. And I'm like, the return for Dame being Grady Dick, Lou Dort, Gary Trent, and picks? I don't know about that.
If they didn't want Tyler Hero, like, as the main piece back, I don't think that would really – unless they just change their mind and they're like, we just want to go full rebuild, build around the young 3 guards that we do have, and we'll take picks. Unless that's the case, which that could change because we see, like, teams have their stance all the time. Like, this is what we want, and then they end up trading for maybe less than what they were asking for. That could happen, but as of right now, like, that just doesn't make sense because we're not getting those signs from Portland's front office at all. Like, the only signs we're getting is Miami, you don't have enough. Like, it's either going to have to be a 3-team trade or we want Caleb Martin, or it's always something with Miami that Portland has seemed to not like. So, you know, it's a confusing situation. I feel like I'm getting flashbacks of, like, the Ben Simmons summer where this team's involved. Is it the Nets? Is it the Blazers? Is it the Celtics? Is it the Hawks? Like, it just seems like this just seems like it's never going to end, bro. Like, I feel like we might be like around January, February, and we're still talking about, well, where's Dame going to go? He hasn't played this season. Where's he going to go? And like, I was so close the other day to just muting the name Damian Lillard. Like, I was this close, but I'm like, I can't do that because that's very just unprofessional of me. And I got to stay up to date with the news.
Yeah, I don't know. When there's just so much smoke and no fire, it does eventually get to like, oh my gosh. But with a player of Damian Lillard's magnitude, like, I do understand why they're being a little bit more cautious, like really wait for the right deal to come about. It's just at a certain point, like, let's get something done because we don't want to sit here and just wait forever. I will say the one thing, I really hope if they do the trade with the Raptors, I hope they trade for Scotty. Just personally, I feel like for both sides, that's just by far the best situation because it commits Toronto to one direction, whether or not you like that direction, because Grady Dick seems to be like a piece that's in there regardless if it's a 3-teamer, if it's like whatever it may be. So he's probably gone as well. So you're committing to that one direction of just we're going to compete. And thinking about that Portland roster, even if Scotty's the main piece and it's just like some other like picks and a couple like young guys that are maybe like lower level beyond that, I'm just thinking of that future of Anthony Simons, Scoot Henderson, Shaden Sharp, Scotty Barnes, and whatever big man you want to put in there. And I really like that going forward. They're literally like, they just need one of those assets to turn into a starting big man. And that's a really fun, exciting, young lineup. And if one of those guys doesn't pan out, you're still talking about 2 or 3 guys that could turn into star players. So from that perspective, like if they're trying to get off of Damian Lillard, I really do think their return should be a Scotty Barnes level player, a prospect that may have a bit to go, stagnated a little bit, had a bit of that I don't even want to call it like a slump because he didn't really get worse. He just didn't really get better. But just for him to be able to go to Portland and progress and play with young teams, play with players who are on the same timeline as him, I think it's the best for him and his development. And it's just like it's a match made in heaven, I think. Like, I love that idea on paper. And especially because he doesn't create a logjam in Portland. Like, they have the guards, and then one of them, probably Shaden Sharp, can play the 3, but then you slide in Scotty like that 4 spot. And I think he's fine there. He might be a little undersized for a 4, but like he's definitely, I don't think he'd be uncomfortable playing there. And so at that point, it really feels like a great match.
Yeah, that's why, like, if I was Portland, back to a point that you said, like, Portland's kind of waiting. I'm glad they're doing that because it's a front office that we haven't been able to really trust to make good moves. And they're not just baiting it just because Dame wants out or anything. Like, they're waiting till they get something that they really like to move forward with their future. So, and I do agree, like, they shouldn't accept, like, if it is Toronto, they shouldn't accept a trade that doesn't include Scotty Barnes. Like, it doesn't make sense for them. Like, OG, good player, but that just doesn't really, even though he's a younger guy still, it doesn't really fit the timeline that I would think of. Scotty Barnes fits that. He's going into year 3. You got Scoot Henderson as a rookie, Shaden Sharp going into year 2. Anthony Simons is, I think, going in like year 4, year 5. Like, he's been in the league for a little bit, but still a relatively young player as far as him being a key contributor year in, year out. This is going into like his 3rd year of being that kind of guy. So still a very young core, whatever picks you get in return. Like you said, Gabe, you just got to get a big in the future that's solid because those 4 guys right there, you know, as you know, we think Scotty can be really good in this league as like a key player. That's an elite core already. You don't need like a, you know, Joel Embiid type big. You just need somebody that can block shots, rebound, set screens. Like, that's it.
Yeah, I'm calling that minimum a top 3 young core. Minimum.
I already like what they have, like, but if they got like Scotty, I love it. Like, I really love it.
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, like you said, they're at a point now where there's no point in rushing on a Dame trade just to settle for something. Like, if they've held on to Dame this long, he's been a part of their franchise this long, they've tried to remain competitive with him for this long, you just got to wait out until you get something you're happy with. There's no point in rushing a trade at this point. You've got him extended. You've got him under contract. Like, just wait till you get something you're happy for, whether that's Scotty or whether that's something else. There's no point in just trading him for something you're not happy with at this point.
Yeah, they got all the leverage. And like I said when Devin was gone, Gabe, like, again, it goes back to the Ben Simmons situation. Philly had the leverage in that situation too, and they waited until they got exactly what they wanted. A star became available. Even though the James Harden situation didn't work out all the way, that was something that they did to try and push their team forward. And in the moment, it was a very good trade. So, you know, I'm glad Portland's doing this, and hopefully they just, even if it takes the entire season and we're going into next offseason, you still have the leverage at that point because Dame is under contract for a pretty long time.
Definitely. I mean, even from the standpoint of it just makes sense to either A, let their guys continue to get their run from their young guys standpoint, and if Dame's around for a couple of months to mentor them and he actually shows up and plays, not the worst thing in the world either. I mean, if Scoot Henderson can learn from Dame Lillard a little bit, not exactly the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, I just can't wait for stuff to pan out, bro. If Dame is a Raptor, like, the fan in me will be excited, and even the Scotty fan in me, probably. I'm not gonna lie. I can wear more Raptors gear on pod, so you guys can stop calling me a bandwagon. But he's always been a player. Like, he's always been a player I've really enjoyed. So for him to play for my favorite team would be quite exciting. That synthesis there of fandoms. would be cool. And even like the Scotty fan in me would really enjoy for him to go to Portland and be able to play with players on his timeline, like I was saying. So for his development, for the Raptors picking a direction, for really every angle of it, I do think any Dame for Scotty centered trade would be a massive success for all sides.
Definitely makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. But whether you're here live or whether you're watching this after the fact, let us know where you think Dame's going to go. Because even though Toronto's been the talk of the town for the last week, it is still far from certain where Dame will end up.
He is not a Celtic. I will say that.
I believe he indeed will not be a Celtic. That is probably one of the teams that is a safe bet to not go to. Although, who knows, man? I didn't think Kristaps was going there, but Buddy is a lot more realistic for sure.
Yeah, I'd rather have Buddy at this point. I'd rather have Buddy.
Yeah, I don't even want to know what a Dame trade with Boston would look like.
Have to wait for JB's extension, because you probably have to trade JB.
You'd have to, yeah. You'd have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, not likely. But
you got your big.
Yeah, you guys got your big trade of the summer, so you guys are good in that department. But I think we'll move on from the Damian Lillard talks, and we will move to the main topic of the stream, and that is our 2018 redraft. As previously mentioned, the draft that is headlined by said Luka and Trae Young draft night trade. I did not have any way to. Let me have my mic fall over real quick.
Whoa.
Did not have.
He's not used to the home setup, man.
The home setup is rusty, man. It's been a few weeks, to say the least. But I did not have a order set up for the draft, so we'll get a random number generator going real quick because we are no longer penalizing myself for my terrible Bucks pick in last year's playoffs to give me the last overall pick in every draft. That is done and over with. For this week, our random number is 3, so that means Reek, you can start us off in our redraft. We'll start from the top from pick number 1.
I mean, this goes without saying. Luka Doncic would be the number 1 pick in the redraft for the 2018 draft. Nothing else needs to be said. Like, this guy has been all NBA first team since like year 2. Like, he's been amazing. So, that's the easiest pick in this draft by far.
I agree. I have nothing to add.
Yeah, not much to say here about pick number 1. Luka is pretty clear-cut number 1, to say the least.
So I'll go with number 2 then. Okay, this work is little. I gotta stay consistent with my point guard list. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander would be the second pick in this draft. Shai would be the second pick. We've seen he's been a very good contributor since like year 2, where he averaged like 20 points a game on a playoff team. And now him being the face of a franchise, being an All-NBA player last season, averaging 30 points a game, the way he gets his buckets, the way he's a very good playmaker, being a better defender with winning, being more of a factor in OKC, we've seen that. Just such a great player that probably hasn't even scratched the surface of how good he's going to be, which is scary because this is somebody that's already an All-NBA guy, 30 points a game. Like, he's already that good. But him being the building block of OKC moving forward just shows, like, the type of talent that he is. And it was close between him and, obviously, I'm going to just say Trae Young because he's that good too. But, got to stay consistent with the point guard list. I would have Shai as the second pick.
Yeah, I'm with that as well. I do also have Shai at number 2. I just think he has the second highest ceiling of anybody in this draft, not named Luka. I do think when you talk about Trae's probably accomplished a bit more up to this point, but I just think that what Shai can still accomplish is so high. It's like there's really limitless potential there, and OKC, like you said, is just scratching the surface of what they can do. And when you're doing a redraft of players this young, like, you do have to project a little bit. And when I'm projecting who now I want for the rest of their 15, 20-year careers, Shai is definitely the second best guy there besides Luka Doncic.
I've definitely been pushing all of the OKC propaganda all offseason, but I got Trae here. Trae's my guy at number 2. I think Trae has been hurt over the last few years by his situation in Atlanta, and I still think there's a ton more we see from him on the offensive end. And there's a reason why we were comparing him and many people putting him over Damian Lillard only 12 months ago. This guy is such a special offensive talent. There's very few guys in the league outside of Luka that can do what he does from a creation standpoint for himself and for his teammates consistently at like 27, 28, and 10 type of guy. He's just a top 10, top 5 offense in of himself on most nights outside of last year because their offense was a mess. But that's the team. And Trae Young is just continually going to be that guy on offense. Shai's a great talent in his own right, comfortably top 3 in this class for me in a redraft. But Trae's offensive engine and Trae's offensive creation is just very, very rare to come by. And Shai is very good at it, but Trae's a whole other tier above him. And Luka's on a very small other tier of guys that are at that level alongside him. Despite the defensive concerns, give me Trae Young at number 2.
I don't hate it.
I think they're all offensive powerhouses rather. Like, these are guys who can all go out and get 30 any night. I think Luka and Shai both averaged 30 last year, and Trae, if he's never done it, he's definitely been very close with the high assist numbers. So there's just so much offensive firepower. I really can't blame you for taking Trae.
I think Trae was like 28-9, like year 2, I think.
It was pretty early on.
Something crazy. It was just the team was just terrible, so he didn't really get enough credit for that. But that's still, even if you average that on like a 15-win team, like that's still 28-9. Like that's elite numbers every single night.
Yeah.
I got Trae Young at 3. Like I said, very close between him and Shai. But like you mentioned, Dev, like this guy is a top 10 offense pretty much year in, year out. You know, except for like last season. But that's just how elite he is. He can get you a game. Whether it's a playoff series, play-in, Trae gonna get you a game, man. And he's so elite. I hope that he I don't want to say bounce back because I don't think last year was as bad as people wanted to make it seem, but just hopefully the team success comes around because Trae Young I think he affects winning more than he gets credit for because this Atlanta team would probably be like a bottom feeder in the Eastern Conference without him on the court. You know, so hopefully they can figure it out. Full year in Quinn Snyder's offense, I think would be good. But yeah, he can't fall past 3 in any redraft. I don't care what case you make. He's at worst the 3rd player in this draft.
Even with Atlanta being mid the past like 2 years or so, he's still more accomplished in his career so far than Shai is in terms of all-star appearances. I think All-NBA, they're either tied or Trae might have one more. And then that conference finals run alone. So he's definitely done more and for longer than Shai has. Like I said, it's really just going forward. I think Shai's ceiling and what he's going to do is just going to be a little bit more. So I've Trae at 3 as well. And like you guys are saying, it's definitely very close.
Definitely. 3 very elite offensive guards at the top of this class. There's no doubt about it. But once you get out of the top 3, it gets a little bit more interesting. You start to get a little bit more wings and a few more front court guys. I'll get us started with number 4. This is where I have Mikal Bridges. This is where some projection comes in because I think if we get a lot more of what we saw last year in Brooklyn, he's the best two-way player in this class because the 3 guys above him are elite talents. They're elite offensive talents unless Shai gets some Clippers defense back in him. More of those flashes from Brooklyn. And like, there's just not much you can do to stop this guy. He's already one of the best defensive wings in the league, consistently one of the most, if not the most available player in the league, in a league that very much suffers from a lack of availability at this point. He's just got so much going for him that you'd like in the modern NBA. Such a productive player, such a player that impacts winning basketball. Hopefully we get him in a winning environment, whether that be via Brooklyn improving or him being traded over the next year or two so he doesn't stay on a team that's kind of sitting in the middle of nowhere for as special as a talent as he is. But I had to put him at number 4 with that hope of the projection that offense continues and we see a really elite two-way talent continue to blossom over the next few years.
Okay. So I have another split from you here then. I do have a different pick at number 4. Guy I'm notably a fan of. got Jaren Jackson Jr. here at number 4. It's the walking defensive monster, bro. I talk about it every single week. I don't know how this gets brought up so often, that he really took the Grizzlies defense by himself from being average to being one of the best in the league. I even was talking about it like literally yesterday. Last year, the Grizzlies without Jaren Jackson were 10-9 in the games he didn't play. In the games he played, they were like 41-22. His impact on winning is, I would say, the biggest on that team. A lot of times when Ja Morant goes out of the lineup, they still just keep on keeping on. We saw last season when Jaren missed time, they weren't as good of a team. And this is a team that's been one of the best teams, not only in the Western Conference, but in the entire league, regular season-wise, for a couple years straight now. So his impact is just too much for me to have him lower than 4. Mikal Bridges is definitely on the same tier as him, but Mikal Bridges kind of just broke out of being role player status here recently, and I want to see just a little bit more, whereas I know Jaren's going to be giving me this just complete defensive needle moving for the foreseeable future.
I also have Jaren at 4 for me as well. The defense, like, that goes without question, but I think an also very underrated offensive game as well. Just what he provides, very steady, very consistent on that end of the floor. Does what's needed. Some nights, if Ja is out, he can step up, become more of a focal point of the offense. Just been very impressed with him. And he's been a little more available, like, in the regular season, compared to, like, his first, couple years in the league. Like, it was surprised, like, how quickly he came back from the injury that he suffered. I think he had surgery, like, the summer going into last season. And only missed, like Gabe mentioned, like, he missed, like, 19 games last year. So very, very just impressed with Jaren. I'll get us started with 5. This is where I do have Mikal Bridges. It's tough to just ignore what he did the second half of last season. And we can't even if it's a slight drop-off, it's not going to be that much. Like, he's still going to be a very, very good shot creator, very good scorer on the offensive side of the floor. And he's the best on-ball defender in this draft, probably the best, second-best defender overall in this class, maybe third, but still very elite on that side of the floor. This is a guy that's been, like, in B-boy conversations before. Like, he's that good defensively as a wing. Very excited to see what he can do with a full season in Brooklyn being the guy. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm right there with you with Mikal at 5. And I don't even want to talk about what he did in Brooklyn, because even what he was doing before that, just in terms of his consistent production, he was already having a career year in Phoenix. He was known to be a guy who was going to be on the court every single night. He doesn't miss games, and that's a rare commodity in today's league. He's just so great on the defensive side of the ball, and then just to come over and progress in that shot creation ability, be a premier ball handler, be a premier scorer, be a true number 1 option. That was just, like, unheard of. So for everything he's shown when he was put in a role, and then how much he succeeded even when he was put in the position to be a lead guy, his ability to just do it all and to thrive in whatever situation he's put in is so valuable.
Definitely. A lot of love for Mikal and his career so far. But of course, I had him at 4. This is where I have Jaren at 5. And like you guys touched on it all, and like you said, Gabe, they weren't even an average defense when he was out last year. They were a bad defense. These boys were a bottom 5 defense last year in Memphis before Jaren came back. They were comfortably a top 5 defense once he was back. He's that impactful. The offensive game is still underrated, and I still think will improve. Hopefully, like you mentioned, Reek, that availability that we've seen improve over the last couple of years continues to be something we see from Jaren. That's probably the biggest factor for him moving forward through the rest of his career. But if that continues, we see a little bit more of an offensive lead, comfortably going to be a top 5 player in this class. And defense alone is going to make him one of the most valuable guys in this class. And we already saw it last year. Seen it in years past, but last year was just a whole other level to how good he's going to be on the defensive end.
All right, so we have the same consensus top 5 between us all, and I'd be a bit surprised if we all didn't have the same number 6, because I think this next guy is easily better than everybody below him after last season. At 6, I have Jalen Brunson.
Me too.
What he did in New York last year, and even what he did in his last season in Dallas, is like the highlight moment is always what he did when Luka missed those playoff games, just completely balling out, showing flashes of what he could be. And then coming to New York and instantly just being their number one option, their leader, and bringing them back to the playoffs after their fall off the season prior. So impressive from top to bottom. But then even when they got to the playoffs, everybody around him, RJ, Julius Randle, all these guys, very inconsistent, very up and down. And he was their consistent driving force the entire time. He was getting number one defense looks. And he was still able to go out there and play his game. The fact that he's just not able to be shaken in such a consistent point guard is something that New York really needed and something that really impressed me. And I would be expecting to be an all-star next season.
You know, it's so funny, like watching him in college. If you would have told me that we would think of him in this light as like a guy that's an all-star, all-NBA caliber guard, I would say, like I would have been like, no. Like, no, I could have seen him being a good like role player, but being like the guy on the playoff team. Nah, I didn't see that. Even as good as he was in college, I didn't think his game would like translate. But he's developed so much, like even since his Nova days, man. Like learning how to play like with Luka, be productive as an off-ball guard, and then you put him on the ball with another All-NBA guy, Julius Randle, and being the best player on that team. Like, man, I'm a Jalen Brunson truther. I really love his game. I love to see it, man. I love to see how elite he is, and I hope we see that. Not even an all-star elite because he could have been an all-star last season, but hopefully he gets that nod this year and potentially even All-NBA, and hopefully the Knicks stay competitive as well.
Hell, let's hope so, man. This is where I have Brunson too, and it's for all the reasons you guys just mentioned. Great end of his time in Dallas. Absolutely brilliant season last year with the Knicks. I think it's very replicable. This is just more of what we saw from Brunson as he ended his time in Dallas. It was nothing overly new or overly unproducible in New York. His three-point shooting improved, but that was happening in his time in Dallas anyways. He was never a great three-point shooter, and he just slowly increased that time in, time out. Mid-range game is still great. Post game is still great. Footwork from the point guard position is still some of the best in the game as far as his maneuvering in the post, in the paint, in the mid-range, you name it. He's such a talented guy. Big reason why the Knicks were as successful as they were last year, and I think it's very difficult to put him any lower in this redraft.
You want to kick us off with
top 6?
You want to kick us off with 7, Dev?
I will kick us off with 7. This is where I have Miles Bridges, a guy who I feel like might be getting underappreciated for his talent on the court coming back from his suspension. Off the court stuff, inexcusable. Well, not including that, of course, in this ranking. But fact of the matter is he's playing basketball. And the last time he was on the basketball court, he was a 20-point per game scorer. He was the leading scorer on an above 500 team. And was a very important part in the Hornets being as good as they were. A team that was an above 500 team 2 years ago, even though that seems to be forgotten as well as a team that is not being looked at very favorably heading into this season. Not the best defensive player in the world. Not even the best three-point shooter in the world, but he can attack the rim very well. He's got a decent mid-range game, still a decent three-point shot. He just knows how to get a bucket. And as far as wing players go, those are valuable in this league. There's not many of them. There's a reason why Mikal Bridges was listed as high as he was. There's a reason why Jaren was listed as high as he was, even though he might be considered more of a big than a wing. But there's not that many wings that are going to go that high in this draft compared to where Mikal Bridges and now where I have Miles Bridges is, because they're not that common. They're a commodity, and they're often a rare one at that. So I'm taking Miles Bridges up here because you need me some quality wings, and Miles Bridges is not far off as good as it gets in this draft.
Off-court stuff aside, you can't argue with a 20-point per game score at a pretty decent efficiency clip. Like, you can't really argue with that. I don't hate it. I have him lower. I don't hate it, though. I don't hate it.
I got him lower as well. But I do have a 20-point per game score on a decent clip at my number 7 spot. I might be a little high on him. I might be tripping. You guys can let me know.
This is interesting.
But I got Anthony Simons at 7. I'm very high on him. I just love the way he scores, bro. He's so effective on the offensive end. And I don't think he's gotten the chance to really show the extent of his potential because some of the things that he showed when he would play without Damian Lillard, I think he can be a good lead guard. And even if he ends up being the second guard to Scoot, I think he could be the CJ to Scoot's Dame if Dame ends up being that good of a guard. Like that kind of Robin type guy who's still very effective. Just Portland's situation's been so strange with like there was like the end of one season where they're just like not playing people that obviously last year like Dame wasn't at the end. It's been kind of all over the place, but I think a through line through there has been that Anthony Simons is the truth, bro. And what he does as a shooter, excellent. What he does as a scoring guard in general, excellent. I think he plays with good IQ, very low turnover player. Just I like my efficiency. He brings everything to the game that I enjoy. So I think we're going to see a lot more from him in the future. Like I said, I'm probably projecting a little bit. I think some other guys are a little bit more accomplished, but I love his skill set.
Talk your talk. I got him lower too, but I like your argument. I love Anthony Simons too. Here's my bias pick, man. I got Robert Williams the third at number 7, man. Look, we cannot discount the defensive impact. We talk about this guy every week. It goes without saying, man. Elite defender, underrated offensive player, good passer. This guy is so key to the Celtics on the defensive side of the floor, and really overall. So I gotta have my guy here at 7. Maybe ahead of some guys, but I really value that rim protection that he provides. It's something that you would think is easy to find, but being like the upper echelon, like the top like 2% of rim protectors, I think that is something that is super valuable in today's NBA.
Yeah, there's no doubt he's so productive. He's definitely a bit lower for me, but main reason is availability, not lack of talent. So that'll just continue to be the main thing for him. But like you say, I mean, we've talked about it so much now. You're a big fan as a Celtics fan. I'm a big fan as an enjoyer of Robert Williams. He's just a great talent, so impactful on the defensive end, and still doesn't get enough credit on the offensive end.
He's that guy for sure. I guess I'll kick us off with number 8. I don't even like this pick. I give this guy a lot of shit. Still very talented. Like in a redraft, I can't put him much lower. This is where I got DeAndre Ayton.
Me too.
There's so much to be desired, and you just want to hope like maybe there's still something left in the tank that he can tap into. But from what we've seen, just the inconsistencies overall, I can't put him any higher, but it's tough to put him much lower because even like on his worst seasons, he's still a double-double guy. And that's something that a double-double guy on pretty good efficiency, that's not something that you find very easily in this league. So I can't have him lower than this, but definitely a little bit of a gap between the top 7 guys and him.
Yeah, I do think we're at the point where the players aren't necessarily as high tier, but still a lot of really good guys. I have a repeat here at 8. I made a late switch because I think I had a change of heart on just maybe getting rid of some bias because I think the player who I'm going to have at 9 is a bit of recency bias. But at 9 is where I'm going to have Robert Williams. Pretty much for everything Reek said. Just what he does is so effective. I did have to knock him a little bit because he does miss a significant amount of time. And it feels like when he is there, he's often just banged up and not playing to his 100% ability. But when he is playing to that 100%, he is just so phenomenal and really does so much for the Celtics on the defensive side of the ball that you can't really move him much lower.
That's tough because I do have him lower.
Hey.
I'm gonna have some guys lower down the board, but that's okay. It's probably time. I've had a week with a few hot takes, but this is where I had DeAndre Ayton as well for the same reasons you said, Reek. Just former number 1 overall pick. You still got to hope for some reclamation of what we saw a couple of years ago and a little bit more development from what we hoped for when he was taken number 1 overall. We'll see with a new head coach now in Phoenix, whether that helps, whether he gets out of Phoenix and that's a new environment and that helps his productivity. We'll see how that plays out. I think there's still a sliver of hope there that there's some more that we can get out of him than what we've gotten out of him the last couple of years. But like you mentioned, he's still a double-double machine. He's still a very good mid-range scorer. He's still a productive center. There's just hope that he gets a little bit more out of his game over the next few years. And that's why he sits as high as he is on the list, because at the end of the day, he does still have some upside, and he is still a very talented big man.
Man, it looks like my list is going to have the hot take of the DeAndre Ayton slide, because I don't even have him at 9. And like I said, this pick at number 9 might be a little bit of recency bias. A little bit. But, bro, this motherfucker Michael Porter Jr. does not miss, bro. He does not ever miss a shot. Like,
I don't even know if that would be recency bias because he was kind of shitty in the finals.
Yeah, he was.
In the finals,
just,
bro. There
this
were
is just
times,
a Michael MPJ truther, man. I respect it.
like, his shooting is just so pure. And the amount of times in that whole playoffs where, like, he pulls up, and I swear, I'm like, no, there's that contest, there's no way that goes in. It just goes in anyways. And it's like, he just continues to be effective as a scorer. A little bit of a rocky start because of the injuries and different issues. We know the Nuggets were plagued with injuries, but obviously was able to contribute to winning at a high level. Now, was he the biggest part of that? No, there was a couple other guys that I think were more impactful. But he still was a premier player on that team. I think he still has a lot more to show. And we know, at least with his shooting, he has one skill that you cannot take away and that he can be effective in most systems. Because, we were talking earlier in the pod about, Buddy Hield and how he could probably go anywhere and do his stuff with his three-point shooting. I think a lot of times Michael Porter Jr. shooting, like, it might not be Buddy Hield, but I don't think it's that far off. And I think most of the guys below him might have a little bit of problems with, or they are just like more of like true role player, whereas I think that Michael Porter Jr. could be considered more of a high-level starter.
I don't hate it. You know what you're getting with MPJ for sure. Night in, night out. He's going to shoot that pill.
Definitely. There's no hesitation from what you're going to get with him, but this might be where my bias shows here. This is where I have Wendell Carter Jr. Had to give my love for the Magic center. He's just a guy that always flies under the radar, but he just gets the job done. Really good rebounder, really good rim protector. Not necessarily a guy who's going out and blocking a ton of shots, but he has a lot of deterrence at the rim, affects a lot of shots, gets a lot of guys to drive into the paint and drive right back out of it before they end up having to deal with him. And just continues to be similarly to Robert Williams, an underrated offensive player, someone who can pass the ball really well to the high post, someone who can space the floor a little bit. Just does all the little things well on a team that already has their star talent. Whether he's going to be a long-term piece of the Magic or whether he's the type of guy they look to move off of if they try to make a trade down the line, we'll see. But for the time being, a really impactful piece for them. And big reason why he's one of my favorite players in the league.
I got him at 9 too, man. He's somebody that you watch and you just really enjoy, like, his game. Like, if you just watch him a couple games, like, you just like, this Wendell guy's pretty nice. I was going to say the same thing, like, underrated offensive game. I was thinking more of just, like, his, like, scoring ability. I feel like it's very underrated. Him being, like, a third guy on this team, I think is just perfect for him because he can create a little bit for himself. Like you said, good passer, can shoot the ball a little bit. Like, he just does everything at a quality level for, like, somebody that's going to be, like, your third option on offense. And his defense, like you said, the shot blocking is not, like, off-the-wall numbers, but he affects that game. He affects that side of the floor at a very, very good level. So, gotta love Wendell. I got him at 9 too. And my 10, I have Miles Bridges there. He can't slide much lower, man, because, like you said, Devin, he's a 20-point per game scorer. Even though he missed last season, I don't expect his offense to come back and he just can't score the ball anymore. Like, that's somebody that can get buckets, has steadily improved over his, like, stage of his career. I remember watching him as a freshman at Michigan State. I didn't think his game was going to translate to the next level at all. First couple of years were a little rough, but he figured it out. And, hopefully for the sake of the Hornets, basketball-wise, he can come back and be that missing piece because they missed his scoring on the wing last season. Even though guys filled in, I don't think it was the same level as Miles Bridges because they were a playing team the year before. So hopefully he comes back and he's the same player.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I have him at 10 as well. I mean, when you talk about a guy who was a second option on a play-in team, like what he was able to do made that Hornets team a lot better. I say play-in team, but at the end of the day, they were still an above 500 team. And I don't think the supporting cast was all of that. So, like, really, with it being the LaMelo and Miles Bridges show, and them even being able to get that far, decently impressive on its own. He did have to drop because, some of that off the court stuff and what his future is going to be. If he comes back and he ends up not being the same and he has this fall off, and with all these question marks about the future and talking about guys who have only been in the league for like 5-6 years, I mean, if I'm trying to draft you for a whole career and I really don't know what you're going to be after like year 6, it's going to have to drop you a little bit.
Character concerns, man. Gotta knock him a little bit.
Definitely some valid character concerns from Bridges, so that is very fair. This is where I have Robert Williams, only behind Wendell because of those injury concerns, but you guys touched on it earlier. Great talent on the defensive end, underrated talent on the offensive end. We speak on him a lot, and he's a great talent for Boston. Just availability. He can continue to stay healthy. He'll slide up this list if I make a redraft for this 2018 draft in a few years' time, because the talent and the impact is undeniably there.
Sure, you want to kick us off with 11?
Yeah, I can.
You said
I can kick off 11.
Don't matter.
But you can go ahead, Gabe, if you want.
I'll take it.
You sounded ready, so go ahead.
Yeah, this is going to be the end of the slide. There's another player who I also moved. The recency bias takes, I looked at it more and I'm like, overall, nah, because oftentimes I'm like, yeah, what's the last thing I saw from you? What's the vibes feeling like? And some of these players who like weren't in the playoffs or weren't very deep in the playoffs, it's like, okay, wait, hold up, let me reevaluate this a little bit. But this is going to be where DeAndre Ayton goes here at 11. So, you guys have both touched on him already, so I don't really have a lot to add. It's just like all these issues and problems with like, he has issues with this coach and, all the motor concerns and everything it may be. It like makes it hard because it's like, are the pros really outweighing the cons when this player has this potential and this ability, but the production isn't really living up to that? Whereas I think for the most part, all the guys above him are giving you that production a bit more consistently. Now, there might be like the health concerns with some of the guys like a Porter, Robert Williams, Anthony Simons, like all of them have missed some time, even Jaren up towards the top of the list. But DeAndre Ayton, like he's playing minutes, he's on the court, taking up a roster spot, and I like don't know what I'm going to get night in, night out. So that kind of hurts, but just for the talent he is, he can't slide any more than that. And hopefully he can find a way to be more effective either this season on the Suns in a bit of a new system, new coaching, or he finds a new destination and he begins to thrive there.
Yeah, I don't hate that at all. Like you say, there's enough hesitancies about Ayton over the last couple of years to definitely warrant him slipping a little bit, but hopefully we can see the pieces get put back together over the next year or two and we can see a little bit more of that upside realized. But this is where I finally took the guy that you took a lot higher up the board, Gabe. This is where Anthony Simons goes for me. Love his scoring. Absolutely love his scoring. I was high on him in Portland just like 2 or 3 months before he started to make that breakout at the end of, the 2021 season. I'm a little bit concerned about what his impact on winning is going to be compared to some of these guys above him with the nature of a smaller scoring guard who's really good but not great. And that's not to say he's not going to have a really good career, because he's going to have a really good career. But there's a lot of small scoring guards in this league who just never quite get over that hump, never quite get that all-star team, never quite have that postseason success. That's a bit of my hesitancy with Anthony Simons right now compared to some of these guys I have above him, like a Robert Williams, like a Wendell Carter, like a DeAndre Ayton. Guys who, although outside of DeAndre Ayton the last couple of years, I know can have postseason success, are in roles that are going to lead to a lot of success in winning basketball. Anthony Simons is going to have a great career, and he's likely going to have a lot of years where he's going to average 18, 20, 22 points a night. I just don't know where his teams as a ceiling go. And small scoring guards are a little bit of a concern sometimes in terms of longevity. and how long that career goes. So there's a lot of projection going into this Anthony Simons pick, but this is where he falls for me.
Yeah, that's well said. There's a couple guys like him, like in this draft, that kind of fit that mold. Like good players can put up numbers. How does it affect winning? Um, I'm looking at somebody right now that's not too far away, but my 11 would be Michael Porter Jr. For the simple reason Gabe mentioned it earlier, like we just know, like you know what you're gonna get from Michael Porter Jr. He's gonna shoot 6, 7, 8 threes a game at a pretty good clip, pretty efficient scorer. If he's your third shot creator, that's solid. That's very, very solid. We've seen he impacts winning. He's a championship player essentially. He wasn't amazing in the finals, but he had his moments where he was solid. And this is the range where he got drafted. It's around the range he got drafted in real life. One of those dudes that is just like a plug and play player. Like he can play alongside, I think, anybody. Obviously, I think Jokic really helps maximize that. But if you put him next to any like good creating number one option, like a Luka Doncic, like a LeBron type of guy, he would be a valuable piece next to those dudes because of his 3-point shooting potential. So I got Michael Porter Jr. here.
I do not against that one bit, but I have his teammate, or former teammate, I should say, on this list before I have MPJ. The next pick at 12 is where I have Bruce Brown. Might be some projecting involved in this pick because Bruce Brown did not have the most flashy or productive start to his NBA career, but the last few years have been very productive. He was great in Brooklyn. He was, of course, phenomenal in Denver. I only expect more things in Indiana to go well for him in his time there, but I just see a player who impacts winning basketball in so many ways, whatever role he's put in. Continues to be very available, continues to be someone who's very adaptable, continues to be someone who improves. He's improved as a defender throughout his career. I mean, he's always been a good defender, but he just continues to be good on that end. Has now become a very underrated passer and playmaker throughout his career, whether it was as a screener in Brooklyn or now as an on-ball guy in his time in Denver. Went from a negative 3-point shooter to a very good 3-point shooter and create his own shot now at points. Like, he's just evolved so much that I have no reason to believe that he won't continue to evolve, at least to some extent, and continue to be a very productive basketball player. And even if he doesn't improve that much, he has those intangibles. He has those qualities that make for winning basketball players, that make for players that are going to succeed in the postseason. I really like what I'm going to see from Bruce Brown throughout the rest of his career. I'll touch on MPG later. Evidently, availability is going to be a big reason why I have not named him yet. But I really like what I've seen from Bruce Brown, and I know that he's going to really impact any team he plays on for the rest of his career. So this is why I have him at 12.
I'm with that. I was talking about how some recency bias takes. I had to move some guys down a little bit, and Bruce Brown was one of the guys who I originally had a bit higher, but I did have to move a bit because I'm like, maybe I am going a little bit too far with it. But you know what? You took that stand, and I got to respect you for that. But
well said.
This is where at 12. At 12, this is where I have Wendell. Him and Ayton kind of being near each other seem to be pretty consistent among all of us. Just kind of where we had the two of them. Obviously differed a bit, but these two, I think they're in like a similar tier. I think Ayton's probably the better talent, but I think Wendell, just that consistent production, not having as many issues there, maybe a bit more rounded overall with the way his game is. A lot of things to like. I think the main thing missing from Wendell right now is really just being put in a good situation where he can actually compete for something, because we know the Bulls, when he was there, weren't very good. And the Magic have obviously been rebuilding while he's there. But I think his game is well suited to contribute to a team that's going to win things. So I just hope he really gets to showcase that when the Magic, I would assume, take a bit of a leap this year.
Don't hate it. This is where I got Anthony Simons. There's actually, I think my channel trailer on YouTube is why the Blazers should trade Damian Lillard, because Anthony Simons is that good. So yeah, I like Anthony Simons a lot. I'm kind of with Dev though. Like, this is 2 seasons where he's put up really good numbers for a team that was pretty bad. How will he impact winning once the Blazers are ready? Like, they're young core is ready to be good. I'm interested to see that if he's a long-term piece. I don't know. Interesting, but you can't argue with he's a very productive offensive player and play either guard spot at I think a pretty good level. We saw the year he broke out, Dame was out, he was playing the lead guard very well. And then we saw last season off the ball, playing really well, shooting the 3-point shot really good. Some nights could be their best scorer. Like he's just that good offensively. So really like his game. How does he impact winning? We'll see down the line. But for right now, I think this is a safe spot for him.
Yeah, I don't hate that at all. Get us started with 13, Gabe.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So this is where I took Bruce Brown. I originally had him as high as 11, and I was going to make the DeAndre Ayton slide real crazy. But I thought about it more, and I'm like, I'm a bit higher on Bruce Brown because of how he exceeded expectations and obviously being part of that Nuggets championship run. But at the end of the day, he is kind of more of a role player guy. And I do feel like pretty much everybody above him can be like high-level starters. I think Wendell's pretty dynamic. Ayton has the talent to be very dynamic. Whereas I think Bruce Brown, he has definitely rounded out his game a lot. And he's going to be very effective as a glue guy. I just don't know if his ceiling is to the same level as the guys above him. But I do know what I'm going to get from him is going to be some very consistent production in whatever role you put him to. Devin, earlier you were mentioning just how varied his skill set is, how much he's added over the years. And whether he's the starter on your team, whether he's a bench, whether you're an up-and-coming team like the Pacers who just signed him, or whether you're a team competing for a title right now like the Nuggets were, Bruce Brown can fit almost anywhere and find a way to be effective. And for that, you have to give him his credit.
Well said. This might be a hot take. I don't know if it is. I don't know how you guys feel about this guy. I got Colin Sexton at 13.
Ooh.
I got Colin Sexton at 13.
Wow.
I don't hate it.
I last season, I feel like you can't really judge him too much because he's come off the injury. I don't feel like he was ever really fully healthy, like just when he got started out in Utah. So I'm going to take last season with a big grain of salt. When he was in Cleveland, even though like they weren't always like the winningest team, this man's production was really off the charts, man. And he was an efficient 20-point scorer for a couple seasons there. And I don't know, I value that. Even if like in this range, like even if he's like a 6-man type guy, somebody that's as efficient as he is, as competitive as he is, I don't know. I really value that, what he brings to the table. I got him at 13 now. How does he ever bounce back from the injury? Does he get back to that level? We'll have to see. I hope he does because he can definitely help out that Utah team, in that backcourt because he's that good of a scorer.
Yeah, definitely. That's my biggest thing with him is the injury concern, but I'll touch on that later when I get to him because I got my own injury concern to discuss here. This is where I finally have MPJ on my list. And that's the biggest thing is, can this dude's back hold up? And I hope the answer is yes. But, I mean, this is the guy who has already gone through back surgery after back surgery after back surgery, and he's in his mid-20s. This is not a good sign. And I hope the best for the guy. He's a great talent to watch on the court. He's a great shooter, as you guys have mentioned. And he still probably has upside as a shot creator if he ever gets that reign to do so and he can stay healthy enough to do so. I just don't know if he's going to ever be able to do that or be healthy enough to sustain that for any amount of longevity. Hopefully he does and I get proved wrong because I am by no means hoping on this guy's downfall, but this much of a back concern since he was like 16, 17, 18, like he's been struggling with this for a long time. It's not a good sign. So there's a lot more guys that I feel are a bit more dependable in terms of productivity and longevity above him. And that's the only reason he falls this far. Pure talent, easily top 10, but the longevity questions is definitely a bit of a concern for me.
I can
Where did
respect
you have him
that.
at, Gabe? You had him at like 8, Gabe?
MPJ, I had him at 8. At least like you have the consistency there of like all these guys who have injury concerns are going to go a lot lower. So I can get behind it. It's a criteria and it's a criteria you're following. So even if we have them at different spots, like Makes sense. But we're on to 14 now.
Correct.
Yep.
It's bias time.
I'll go first because y'all both mentioned him. I had Bruce Brown at 14.
Okay.
Everything you guys said, I can't add to that. Ultimate role player.
All right. So, yeah, my bias pick here is Gary Trent Jr.
Me too.
So, yeah, when he's on, he's just a very nice scorer. He's one of like the only great spacing threats on the Raptors team right now. He even showed really good things when he was in Portland, like back in the bubble days and all that. But just a guy who just is a good scorer, a good second guard to have / wing. Like he's been put in a weird situation on the Raptors team because like the team construction is weird. But I know what his skill set is. Can fit in most different situations in the league. There's a reason the Raptors wanted him when he was in Portland and why he looked good there, and it still continued to look good here. The biggest problem with him is that he can be a little bit on and off at times. But like I said, when he's on, I mean, there's nights where he's the best player on the floor for the Raptors, and there's nights where you're like, is he even on the court? So if he was a bit more consistent, he'd probably even have room to grow.
Yeah, there's definitely an argument for that. I mean, this is where I have him as well. And like you say, it's a weird spot for him on the Raptors. And there's some nights where he gets relied on to do way too much. And that'll be probably even more true this year, assuming he doesn't get traded in a potential Dame trade. So they don't even have Freddie anymore. So their perimeter creation is even worse. I mean, there was a few games last year where it's just like, well, Gary, go get something for us, especially if Siakam's been playing 40 minutes and this guy's just gassed. It's like, we need a perimeter bucket. You're up. And to be fair, he has improved a lot. I mean, this is a guy who pre-breakout in Portland and even pre-trade to Toronto to a point was basically solely a three-point shooter. He could create his own three-point shot. He wasn't only a catch-and-shoot guy, but he was basically only a three-point shooter. Now, he's still not great at getting to the rim, and his finishing isn't great, although it has improved. But he does have a solid mid-range game now. He's gotten to a point where he can create his own mid-range shot at a pretty good clip, at a relatively efficient clip. And so that's a nice element he's added. The defensive stuff, I think people have finally cooled down a little bit on the fact that he's not actually a really good defender, because there was a point in time where him and Freddie were leading the league in deflections forever, and people were hyping up Gary Trent's defense like crazy. He jumps passing lanes. His on-ball defense is okay. It's not great, but point being, he's a very good offensive talent, a very good shooter, and those are always going to be valuable in this league. There's things that you would still like to see him improve on, but still a very good talent, and still someone who's relatively young for this draft class. So a lot of value in Gary Trent. But I'll jump to 15 quickly. Seems you mentioned him a couple of picks ago, Reek. Colin Sexton's my 15. And I like a lot of what you said from a positive standpoint of what we saw in Cleveland. Really efficient scorer, really dynamic with the ball in his hands. There's just a few too many concerns for me to have him any higher. Injury is a part of it. I hope he recovers well, but like you say, we never really saw him fully healthy last year in Utah. Hopefully this year he looks fully healthy, but until we do see him fully healthy, it's a little bit of a concern for me, especially for a guy who does rely so much on his explosiveness and his ability to get downhill towards the rim. And that leads into my other concern, is the fact that he is a very small guard and not a great three-point shooter. He's not a terrible one, but he's not a great three-point shooter. He's shot some decent percentages throughout his career, but it's never been a very high volume. It's never been an absurd difficulty. He's never going to be that 6'1" guard who's a really high-level three-point shooter. He's going to rely on getting downhill and getting to the rim, which is fine as long as that continues to work. But your explosiveness is going to wane, which is going to affect the longevity of his career unless he improves his three-point shot. And he's already got the injury concern. So there's even more playing against him now that could affect what he's best at on the basketball court. Hopefully he comes back healthy this year, and that's not as much of a concern. But he might not age the best for a small scoring point guard, given his lack of three-point shot and given the fact he's already now a significant lower body injury through the door, and he's only 24.
Yeah, he definitely has a lot of concerns about him, which is why I guess once again there's a player on this list that I'm a bit low on. So, I had DeAndre Ayton, and now I guess we'll see where I have Colin Sexton as well. Devin, I know you were low on MPJ. I can't remember if there was a player you were super low on that you took way after us.
Anthony Simons was probably the biggest gap, but that was only a pick after me.
Maybe. Yeah, I had Miles. You had Miles at 10, didn't you, Gabe?
Yeah.
So far,
I guess you got the balanced list. I'm
like the median between everybody. I'll give my 15. Yeah, I'll give my 15 since we just y'all talked about him. I got Gary Trent. I don't know if I've ever mentioned this on the podcast, but there are definitely tweets on my Twitter of me saying like Gary Trent would be the steal of this draft, and maybe he was because he was like picked like 40 something. So, he's made his like second NBA contract. He's a very good 3-point shooter, decent scorer. Maybe that weighs out, man. But I really like Gary Trent, man, and I think like you mentioned, Gabe, like he's somebody that would fit in anywhere just because of his skill set, and definitely more now than just a 3-point shooter like you alluded to, Dev.
Yeah, I think when it comes to like the biggest steals of this draft, as far as guys who were like actually drafted, definitely among like him, Bruce Brown, and another guy who's probably in that conversation is going to be the guy who I take at 15. I got Jay Vando here. I know the last look at him wasn't good because he got kind of played off the floor in the playoffs. But we've seen a lot better players get played off the floor in the playoffs due to their skill sets. But what he's going to give me for 82 games during the regular season is going to be just some tough, physical basketball, down in the paint, getting rebounds, playing defense, a lot of things that I love. And that's the guys who you need because the 82-game season is a long time, a lot of physicality, and a lot of guys get worn down. And for him to be able to do that night in and night out is just a very valuable skill set to have, even if it doesn't translate great to the postseason. I think this is about the part of the list where we're at guys who are like probably not your premier starters, but they can be like impactful in a starting lineup, but then also are going to be maybe best utilized as like a bench guy, and he's kind of right on that border. So I think this is a fair spot for him.
Don't hate it.
Definitely not against it, but he is a ways down my list. I will say that much because at 16, this is where I have DeAnthony Melton, another guy who could be thrown in the steal of the draft category, in my opinion. Late second round pick, and just comes in and does the little things right. Really good 3-point shooter, really good defensive guard at the point of attack. What team can't use that? Every team can use that. And he was an underrated pickup from the 76ers last offseason from the Grizzlies via trade. The Grizzlies just had too many dudes. It was a problem of having too many good draft picks over there the last few years, but very under the radar player, very under the radar impact from pretty much everyone. I never see anyone talk up DeAnthony Melton, but near 40% 3-point shooter on decent volume every year. Started over half of his games last year with Philly, and he was not a guy who was projected to start. Very impactful guy on both ends. Never can go wrong with having him on your team, starting lineup or the bench. Had to give him some love here at 16.
Didn't he start? I think it was his last season in Memphis. I feel like he was averaging like 16 a game for like the first like 2-3 weeks of the season. Like he was just scoring like crazy.
He was cooking for a few weeks.
He's nice, bro. There's some Grizzlies games where he'd just be like torching people from 3. Like there was one game, I don't remember who it was against, but bro, like he literally knocked down like 5 or something. Like the commentators were going crazy. It's like he can for real heat up sometimes.
He'll play any role that he's asked to play. Like he can play a little on the ball if he needs to, just be a spacer, just come in and lock up. Like he'll do whatever the coach asks. Like he's a pro for sure.
Definitely is. Yeah. Definitely the type of guy you want on your team.
1000%.
Yeah, we have 16.
16.
Yeah, indeed.
All right. Let me get it going because I got a new guy here. I got Mitchell Robinson. I'm the first one to mention him.
I don't know if that's
And-
new because he's my 16 too.
Well, I guess we're pretty similar with having him there. Then he's just a great rim protector, man. He's a dog. I'm afraid that he took Jared Allen and Evan Mobley to school in the postseason. Was one of the centerpieces of that Knicks defense that just continues to impress over the past couple of years since they became a good team. His role, while he does have some flaws in his game that had to knock him down to this point in the list, like a very impactful player when he's not getting himself into foul trouble.
Yeah, but I feel like the playoffs like series are very like fresh in my mind, so this might be a little recency, but I feel like this is a good range for him. Another guy like this is a draft that had a lot of guys in the second round that are like top 20 caliber guys in this draft, and he's one of them for me. Just like you said, good defensive guy, good rim protector, good rebounder. If we could get like you said, stay out of foul trouble one, stay healthy. That's another thing because he's somebody that's kind of sometimes can be nicked up a little bit. Those two things, and if we could see like some of what we saw in the playoffs for like a full 82 or however many games he plays, I would like that a lot. Like that would be I think that could help elevate this Knicks team a little bit, like especially regular season wise, where they could really be like a upper echelon Eastern Conference team. But I like Mitchell Robinson, man. Hopefully he can build off of that postseason.
Yeah, hopefully. I like Mitch Robinson too. He's only slightly further down my list, but definitely a nice postseason from him. Hopefully we see a bit more of that heading into next season. But I'm going to go with someone who had a bit of a rougher postseason, but really showed out in the regular season. It's another shooter, man. Give me Kevin Huerter.
Yeah.
Knows how to hit. Man knows how to hit a three. Don't be doing much else out there sometimes, but he hits the three at an elite enough rate that it don't matter. Threes are so valuable in this league, and there's very few guys that can come off of screens and hit them as good as he does. He showed that last year with Fox and Sabonis. He's probably going to continue to do it again. Now, in an ideal world, we get some better postseason production from him next season, assuming the Kings do make it. But considering it was his first year out of Atlanta, first year not getting passed to by one of the best point guards in the league and Trae Young, very great season from him and just showed how valuable he's going to continue to be with Fox and Sabonis there in Sacramento.
I got Red Velvet here too. Elite 3-point shooter. I feel like he displayed some like secondary like creating stuff offensively last season. Like pick and roll, he was decent. Had some games like improved passer. Was impressed with like just his improvement outside of his 3-point shooting. Like I feel like he improved his games on all levels offensively last season. So I was very impressed with that. If we can see a good postseason out of him, that will definitely help the Kings. Will help him. But they had a couple guys outside of him that didn't play well either. It was kind of going around on that team outside of like De'Aaron Fox. So, hopefully he can improve and them overall can improve. I'm sure more playoff experience for them will help. But yeah, I got Kevin Huerter at 17 as well.
Okay. I think now I'm in the position where I'm the last guy to name somebody once again. This is the end of the Colin Sexton slide for me. His game is just a weird one. Like a small guard who's not a great shooter, it's like it puts him in a bit of a weird spot. I definitely think he can be effective in certain roles, but I think he's one of the first guys here who I'm like, yeah, he's probably just always going to be best utilized in a bench lineup. And there's nothing wrong with being like the traditional 6-man type archetype where, you come in, you're a spark plug off the bench, you get some buckets, and you keep the game going while the starters are getting a breather in. That's fine. I just think it really hinders his ceiling. And so I think most of the guys above him, what they can give me at their best, I like a little bit more. And even some other guys above him, like a Jared Vanderbilt, you might say the same thing for him as far as when he's most effective. But I think his skill set is just a little bit harder to come by than somebody like Colin Sexton, who, like we said, is just more of like just going to come up and score. Like that's a lot of guys. And it might seem a little counterintuitive since I was high on Anthony Simons. But I think with Simons, that shooting ability is really like what made it harder to discredit him versus guys on his tier versus Colin Sexton, who does lack that very significant skill needed to be successful as a small guard.
That might be the biggest range I think we have. 13 to 18.
Might be, although MPJ has got a bit of a range too. But yeah, I think Colin Sexton's the biggest. But makes sense. If he recovers well from injury, could have a really good career ahead of him, 6-man or otherwise. But definitely some valid concerns for him moving through the next couple of years. This at 18 is where I have Mitch Robinson as well. You guys touched on everything earlier. Just a really solid defensive starting center. Offensive game never really developed to be anything more than a lob threat, but nothing wrong with that. He's really good at that. Stays out of the foul trouble and stays available, as you guys mentioned. More than fine for him for the Knicks. Another really good season, and especially postseason for him last year.
Valid. 18, right?
Correct.
This is where I have Jared Vanderbilt. Like Gabe mentioned, you saw him get played off the floor, but one thing he's going to provide is motor on the defensive side of the floor, and you need a guy like that on your team, somebody that's willing to pick up any guard 94 feet or guard any big down in the paint. Like, somebody that's valuable, you would like to see the offensive game just be a little better, maybe be just a okay catch and shoot guy. But if that's not his game, we know one thing he's going to provide, and that's energy on the defensive side of the floor.
Okay. At 18, I'm going to go ahead and take the Anthony Melton repeat pick here. I've always liked his bench production. I was excited when he went to Philadelphia. A bit less excited now because I think that franchise is just in kind of turmoil, or at least getting towards turmoil, and just the way they're headed. And, I want to see him be able to shine as much as he can. But, what he does as a shooter, what he does as a bench guard in general, like, he can always come in. Like I was mentioning earlier with some of the stuff he was doing in Memphis, like, he can for real heat up and just be super effective against anybody sometimes. So, of all of the bench players, once we get to this tier, he's among the premier.
Definitely is. I love what we see from DeAnthony Melton. At 19, I don't know if anyone else is going to have him on the list. I have Kendrick Williams. So under the radar guy in OKC, but I really like that they've locked him up and, at least for the time being, have made him a part of their core guys going forward. This continues to be a really nice two-way guy for them. A not great three-point shooter, but good enough if you leave him open. Works hard on the defensive end, really physical guy in the wing. Those are the types of guys you're going to want in this league, especially coming off the bench, especially as they become more of a postseason team, especially if they make a trade and Lou Dort becomes involved, and they really need that wing production. So never going to be a high-octane offensive guy, but I really like what they get from him on the defensive end, and enough of a spacer that I really value what he does in OKC. So he slides in at 19 for me.
That's a Dev type of pick.
I didn't expect that. Did not expect that, even though it's very on brand.
You guys both mentioned DeAnthony Melton. I have him at 19. We talked about him. Love that guy.
All right. At 19, here's where I'm going to get dangerous. I know y'all don't have him on your list. Give me Mean Bug Duncan, bro. Give me Mean Bug Duncan. Listen.
Playoff bias.
I know that people are low because of what he did after he got that contract. But he bounced back. His shooting was so important to both of Miami's playoff runs. I think what he does on offense outside of that as a cutter was really impressive in this playoff, some of the stuff he was doing off the ball. And honestly, sometimes he even would be a bit surprising with, like, putting the ball on the floor and, like, driving to the bucket. Like, at some point you could be like, how did the defender allow him to do that? But at the end of the day, he did it. I'm going to give him the credit for doing that. But he's been a guy who now in 2 different finals runs, and I don't think he was great in, like, the conference finals run from what I remember. So I'm not going to even talk about that as far as him being part of team success. Yeah, I was about to say he wasn't really on much then. But even as far as what he did in the 2020 run, what he did in the 2023 run, and I think he's got some of his confidence back now. I think he can take what he did in these playoffs and be a bit more consistent of a shooter for them next year. And we know, like, when he's on with the shooting, there's times where he just looks great. And the fact that he's been able to do that in those big time moments, not once, but twice, he's got some signature moments. I want to give him his respect. I know you guys aren't going to have him on the list, and I'm perfectly fine with that, but I'm going to take him.
You know, losing Strus and Vincent, he's gonna have the opportunity, and he's gonna have to get back to that level for sure. So hopefully, I'm a Duncan guy too. I love shooters, and you know when he's on, he's one of the best in the league. So hopefully his confidence is back, like you said, Gabe, and he can get back to that level for sure. So hopefully that postseason run really can translate into next season because one, it would be good for him, and two, Miami desperately needs it because of what they lost in the offseason.
Definitely. I thought about putting him at 20, but
he was like
didn't
the
make the cut.
first guy off. He was like the first guy off my list.
Yeah, he's my first guy off. I couldn't not put Jared Vanderbilt on the list, so he is my number 20. You guys talked about his defensive impact. Hopefully he can have a better postseason when they do get there this time around, but great defensive player, great rebounder. That in and of itself has to get him in the top 20.
I had Dante DiVincenzo as my 20th guy. I got 3 Nova guys in my top 20. Somebody that can play any role that he's asked to play. You know, we didn't get to see the full potential in Milwaukee because he was banged up a little bit, like when they were really making those playoff runs and stuff. But I liked what I saw last season, and I feel like he was so underrated for the Warriors. You know, there were some nights he was asked to step it up offensively. There were some nights he was asked just to guard. Some nights he was asked to be a distributor. Hey, can you get on the boards because Wiggins is out? Like he did anything that the Warriors asked him to do at a very good level. So I was impressed with what he brought to the table last season. Excited to see him with the Knicks, and yeah, he was the last guy I had in my redraft.
I was considering a couple different guys here. I definitely considered Dante at one point. I even considered Devontae Graham for a bit because I've liked some of what he's done over the course of his career as another one of those spark plug, like bench player type guys. But I can't take them over Kevin Huerter. Just what he showed, especially in Sacramento. You know, like he was there. He was a part of Atlanta's deep run, goes on, gets even better, ups his own personal game, and ends up being a big part of Sacramento's success last season. Like, it seems like success is kind of following him. He continues to get better year in, year out. And when we take projections as a part of this list, like Dante, I think Dante is probably going to be about what he is, maybe like a little bit better. And Devontae Graham, honestly, we probably have already seen the best of him. He's probably just going to be what he is at this point. But, he was up to like 18 points per game at one point in Charlotte. So, just going off of that, like who has the best future, who's going to be good for the next 10-year projection, that's got to be Kevin Huerter. And that's probably, that's why you guys had him several spots higher. So he can't miss my list.
We all had the same 19 people, and then we just had one off.
Yeah.
That's funny.
That is
Gabe had
crazy.
Duncan. You had Cambridge, Dev, and I had Dante. That's interesting.
Yeah. Very talented draft class. I will give it that. A lot of second round picks and a couple of undrafted dudes who've carved out some very nice careers for themselves.
Yeah, after like 10, there's honestly after like 7, really, there's so much variance in our list because I think there's a lot of these guys that are on decently similar tiers, but it's kind of just like your preference, and that's why it's a draft.
There's even guys like Mo Wagner's a decent role player. Even though Marvin Bagley wasn't the second pick that people wanted him to be, he's not a bad NBA player. Like he's quality. Like there's still a lot of like you said, Devin. Like this is a very, very deep draft class. Like
there's still solid guys that are not on this list. Like the likes of Lonnie Walker's not on this list. Josh Okogie is not on this list. Grayson Allen is nowhere to be seen on this list. Javon Carter is nowhere to be seen on this list. Keita Bates-Diop is nowhere to be seen on this list. Like there's a lot of regular rotational guys who did not scratch the top 20 of this draft class.
Gabe Vincent didn't make a list either, did he? I thought he'd make at least one of your guys's. Even
He was very much in consideration.
yeah, there's a couple guys there. My Splash Bandicoot. Any Splash Bandicoot enjoyers out there? Svi Mikhailuk.
Future Celtics legend.
Hey, if we had Monty Williams on the pod, Landry Shamet would have gone in the top 10.
That is facts. That is facts.
Sadly. I'm looking. It seems like our consensus, like, biggest riser overall has to be Jalen Brunson, right? Like, just compared to like where he was actually drafted.
Yeah.
That's obvious as a second. I mean, Shea obviously rose a fair bit.
Brunson and Bruce Brown, I suppose.
Gary Trent, so
and Gary Trent's up there. But yeah, Gary Trent was pick 37 and Bruce Brown was pick 42.
I mean, Melton was 46 and he is consistent.
Melton rose a lot too.
He might be the biggest. He might be the. Yeah, that's crazy.
Actually, D'Anthony Melton might be the biggest one. He's like our consensus like 17, 18 pick, and
went up.
He went up. Spots. Yeah, from 46. Yeah, up.
It's almost 30 spots.
Up almost 30. Yeah, Jalen Brunson went up about 25, 26. I actually think D'Anthony Melton's the highest riser.
Yeah, I'd say him and then Bruce Brown slightly behind, and then Brunson are all significant risers. Mitch Robinson had a decent rise too, being in the top 20.
Biggest faller is obviously Marvin Bagley going from.
Yeah, gotta be Jerome Robinson. I don't know if he's getting redrafted.
If we went 60
too. Yeah.
No shade, he just didn't do anything in the league, and he fell out the league in like 3 years. He's one of like the few guys that probably got drafted like top 50 that's not in the league anymore.
Who you drafting first, him or Kevin Knox?
Kevin Knox.
Yeah, I'm drafting Jerome Robinson just because of that Fortnite suit, bro.
There still might be a small something there for Kevin Knox. I don't know what it is.
There's not.
Yeah, I think Jerome Robinson and Zaire Smith are fighting for the roughest fall if we're including everyone.
Yeah, even the other guys like Mo Bamba gets contracts. Marvin Bagley will have a contract.
Yeah.
Troy Brown Jr. will have a contract.
Yeah, he will.
The rest of the top 20 is around, even like down to like Grayson Allen at like 21. Like everybody's on rosters for the most part.
Yeah,
Jerome. Like, I don't think he's played post bubble. I really don't think he has.
I don't think so.
I think he was in Washington last. Or maybe I'm thinking of a different Robinson. I don't even know, bro. Like, he just hasn't been relevant, bro. Like,
Washington sounds right.
And they took him over some decent guys, too. Like,
17 games with Washington in the 2021 season.
Okay, so he did play post-ball.
At least the Clippers took him, and the other guy they took, that Shea dude, don't know what happened to him, but hey.
Yeah, but just imagine they could have had, like, I think they traded Miles Bridges.
They could have probably had Shea and Miles.
Or Shea and MPJ. Like, damn. Yeah, I'm not even going to talk about, like, the Brunsons and people like that because Brunson wasn't even considered to be a lottery guy. But those guys are all in that range that they really, like, probably should have picked, to be honest.
Just like somebody saying, like, the Timberwolves could have Jokic or some shit like that. Like,
yeah, like.
He wasn't rising 40 spots.
The Lakers could have drafted Manu Ginobili. Like, okay. A lot of teams could have drafted Manu.
Every team. If you're in the second round, every team theoretically could have drafted you.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, I was watching the last couple of days I've been watching a lot of Paul George's podcasts. I actually like his podcast now. But it was the Draymond episode. He was talking about, like, he knows everybody that was drafted in front of him. And he was talking about Andrew Nicholson. And
great clip.
I remember that.
Great clip. Great clip. And he said, like, I think Miles Plumlee got drafted ahead of him. I'm like, damn. And Draymond was actually good. Like, he was really good in college, too. So it's like he worked out for, like, 20 teams. It's like, what do these scouts, like when they let these guys slip that far, like, what do they be looking for, man? Like, I don't get it. It's a tough job. It's got to be a tough job, man.
Bro, it's because like people go off like potential and ceiling, but like I don't know, some players, like I guess you just can't view that ceiling off of like physical traits alone, or like the amount of
Yeah.
development or like intangible things. Like if you see like some small guard or something that like doesn't have the greatest physical tools and was just like the main scorer in college, you're like, I don't know how they're gonna fit. Might fall a little bit, and then they get to the league, and all of a sudden maybe they like super get way better at playmaking or something like you just can't predict some development.
I think Draymond's issue, he was in the era where it was like, if they didn't know where you were gonna guard, it was a bad thing. Right. So like, I feel like that hurt like guys like Derek Williams. I think that hurt his development. Even like, you know, an Evan Turner type of guy. Like back then, being a tweener was just so frowned upon. It was like the word. Now it's like if you're big and you can't shoot, that's kind of frowned upon in a way. If you're a young guy, like it's crazy how much in like, that's not even a 10-year span. That's like maybe like a 6-year span of like just how like tweeners are now accepted. Like if you can guard 4 positions, everybody wants you. So it's just like, it's crazy how much the game has advanced in such a short time.
Yeah, it's definitely good on defense. Like I don't know, it can either be really good or really bad because sometimes they're like, even with modern players, it's like, you ever hear where it's like, yeah, you're too small to defend 5s, but you're not fast enough to defend 4s. Like if you lack that ability and you're like a tweener like that, it's like sometimes it can still be a huge drawback, but it's definitely much more rare.
Yeah, I mean, there's some guys that are tweeners but don't actually excel at either role. So it's more so if you're a tweener but you're pretty good at multiple roles, you're good. But I mean, a guy that's still like, you can kind of play the 3, but you can kind of play the 4, but you're not really fitting or good at either, as opposed to the guy who's like, you are good at the 3 and you are good at the 4. There's a bit of nuance there with that, because there's some guys that just can't quite fit. I mean, Marvin Bagley's kind of been one of those guys throughout his entire career, and it's not just the fact that he's a bit of a tweener position-wise that he hasn't fit his potential, but it's always been, is he a 4 or is he a 5? And he has problems at both, and not enough of things that he excels at to make him dominant at those positions. So it's those types of tweeners that still can stick out like a bit of a sore thumb. But if you can be dominant or have some type of advantage that can make you take advantage of that fact that you're a tweener, and you can flip-flop between those two positions, yeah, you are loved in today's game.
Y'all think that hurts Anthony Davis at all? That's just kind of a random question thing about tweeners, because everybody always talks about like AD's best utilized at the 5, but then he never actually like goes out and plays the 5 because like if he's down begging in the post all season, like he just gets too banged up. Like, do you guys think that's like ever a problem? And do you think that's a reason why teams have never like committed to putting him at the 5 full time?
I don't think that's a problem for like his skill set. Like he can guard more than like he can guard multiple positions outside of like, you know, the 4 and the 5. Like he can guard some wings. Like he's that talented of a defensive guy. It's just, he's an interesting case because it's like, you don't want him at the 5 full time, maybe because, like you said, he's just somebody that can get banged up. He just has that history. But when the game's on the line, when it's the playoffs, late in the game, he's at the 5 no matter what. So he's somebody that you like playing with another big for maybe like most stretches in games. But once you get down to it, he's going to be at the 5 anyway. So he's just like he's a very weird case for this conversation.
Yeah, I feel like more so that's just a concern of his availability. I think if anything, it's more of a positive that he can swap out and play the 4 so that he can avoid doing that banging down low, at least to a point. So maybe he does save himself an injury here and there, but it's not really a concern of fit with positions. It's really just the keeping him healthy aspect, at least in my eyes.
Right. I just know that convo of like, he's a 4 who should be a 5, and like, even like in some people's like position rankings and stuff, like literally like ranking him as a 5 when it's like he's just so much always played the 4, and it's like, Not that it, like you said, it doesn't really hurt his skill set. I just think sometimes it can make the roster construction weird of like maybe they're not playing the most effective lineups they can play because he's like out of position.
Yeah, it's kind of like Tim Duncan was also like a 4, but it's like he's really a 5 if you really think about it. Like he's actually a 5, so similar type of like players, molds, but we all know where those guys are best at is when they're like the anchors on that side of the floor. They are the 5-man.
Right. Tim Duncan's era though, like literally like bro, every 4 was playing with another big and like neither of them were shooters. And
Yeah.
that's just a part of the era. There's a reason why they didn't score a lot of points back then.
I want to go back and watch some like late 2000s NBA basketball just to see like how different the game was.
Yeah, I feel that between the bigs, way more hand checking on the perimeter. Like there's just so many different variances to the defense.
Yeah, you're gonna get all your wings are probably taking long twos. You're gonna have
step
2
back
bigs that like one probably has no offensive game, the other one's a post scorer, neither space the floor. Your point guard is probably still more of a traditional passer that's not scoring that much, and if they are, it's probably like open jumpers or something like that. But
yeah, not from 3 that much.
Unless they're like if you have like Gilbert Arenas out there or something, I mean,
Yeah.
it's a little different. But
It might
that
be
roster construction of the one passes, the wings are taking long twos, and the bigs are either in the post or just only there for defense.
Bro, because I remember when like this was like maybe 2013 or 14 or something like that. But like in the summer NBA TV would play like old games. So this was pre-Warriors like dominating and changing the league. But I remember watching like a Celtics Lakers from like the 80s. And I just couldn't watch it. I'm like, this is so different. Like you got somebody like posted up on the wing, passing to somebody posting up on the block. Like, it was just so weird. I was like, I can't watch this, bro. But I might feel the same now going back and watching like a mid-2000s game because it's just going to look so different.
Which is crazy because like the Showtime Lakers were one of the fastest paced teams of that era. So like to think like you're watching Showtime and you're like, this is like weird, like freaking
Weird
backwoods basketball. Like, and honestly,
like,
the 80s offensively was probably better than the 90s and 2000s. Like the 90s and 2000s were more defensive, lower scoring.
The pace was definitely higher. Yeah.
Even like the 70s and 80s, like as far as offensive, like literally as far as how good team offense was in basketball, 90s and 2000s are like the worst offensive product in history. There was a lot of really great talents, but you know how many teams you see? Like the Sixers with Allen Iverson, like a one-man offense. I'm sure Tracy McGrady at times was a one-man offense. Kobe at points was a one. Like there's so many one-man offenses because the team offensive games were just not good. They just weren't. Because it was such a pro defense league. And those are big dominated eras. Like the big dominated eras, just the defense was so much better and the offense was so much worse because of it. Like now we're in a point guard dominated era, which is a more offensive focused setting versus like the 90s were run by the 5 outside of Michael Jordan, and the 2000s was run by the 4 for the most part. So,
and even now that we're starting to get a bit of a turn towards some of the 5s being dominant with Jokic and Embiid, like still elite offensive talents. It's not like you're getting these elite top tier centers that are just solely defensive guys or really good on both ends, but they lie their cap on the defensive end of the floor. I mean, you got Jokic now, who's one of, if not the best offensive player in the league. You got Cat, who's up there in the top center discussion, who's a great offensive player out here shooting threes like crazy. It's very different than what it once was, even if 5s are continuing to improve and make their statement on the league and trying to dampen a little bit the fact that it's been a guard league for the longest time. But it's just so much more offensive focused and offensive oriented now.
Such an interesting dynamic because like the skill level has just improved so much. There's like the offense has to improve at some point. And then it's like the 3-point shot is like shot more than ever at this point. Like guys by themselves are taking like 8, 9, 10 threes a game. And back in like the 80s, teams were probably taking like 5, 6 threes a game. Like it's just
hell, even a decade and a half ago, some teams were only taking that.
Yeah, it's like the game has just changed so much in such a quick quick amount of time. I forget what I might have been watching. Oh yeah, Evan Turner and Iggy was on JJ's podcast, and they gave credit to that Miami team, the Miami Big Three. They kind of started a little bit. Like there was like obviously like the 7 seconds or less Suns had like a part in like small ball and stuff. I think that Magic team with Dwight Howard had like a role in that too, because they were basically running 2 wings that could shoot it, a backcourt that could shoot it, and Dwight Howard as the 5. But that Miami team, when they put Bosh at the 5, Ron at the 4, that was like new. That was pretty new at that time because you got somebody at the 4 that's an elite offensive player. You got a couple shooters on the floor with like Chalmers, Battier. You got D Wade who can slash, create for himself. Bosh who started spacing the floor a little bit. Like that's like kind of the early introduction into like what we see now as the modern NBA. But then the Warriors came along. They just accelerated the process. The Rockets helped accelerate the process too. And now it's like every team has bigs that can shoot, bigs that can space. Everybody can guard multiple positions. And that all happened within like a 10-year time frame.
Yeah, it's a rarity now to get teams like the main team I can really think of that plays like 2 bigs that are non-shooting bigs is like Cleveland. I can think of that many other good teams that play like 2 non-shooting bigs on the court together that often. Like that spacing, you usually have like 3 or 4 guys who can shoot on the court on a good team.
I mean, even shooting or not, there's very few teams that'll ever run 2 bigs. I mean, even when you include shooting, I mean, the Celtics will do it sometimes. The Timberwolves obviously do it, but like, there's not many, even if one of them that can shoot will run 2 bigs at any given point.
The Warriors typically run 2 non-shooters, but Draymond's so dynamic, and then you got 2 of the best shooters ever, the best shooting backcourt ever. So it's like, and their system is just so elite. Like it's like it doesn't matter that they run a lot of times 2 guys that can't shoot.
I just got a pretty good stat for us since we're talking about it. Last year, the team that shot the most or the least amount of 3-point shots per game was the Bulls at 28.9. A decade ago in the 2012-2013 season, the most a team shot was 28.9. That was the Knicks and the Rockets. So in a decade,
wow,
the most has gone from the least.
And that was, I think, Morey's first year in Houston.
Yeah.
And then the Knicks, that was the Knicks with like when they won 54 games. That makes sense. Yeah. That team was up and down. That team was up and down. That makes a lot of sense.
And now the most 3-point attempts a game is up 15 from that at 43.2 last year from the Warriors. Yeah, it's a crazy change in a decade.
Didn't the Rockets have a stretch where they were taking like 50 a game?
I think they did.
I don't know if it was for a full season, but
it was definitely a stretch. I don't know if they had a season because, in 16-17 they were shooting 40, and that was 6 more than the next highest, which was Cleveland.
That's a team who would do something like that. Especially you got to think like they literally in 2020 like they stopped having a center. Like they literally traded their center and played PJ at center, and the worst shooter on the court for them was like Russ. And whether or not he's a good shooter, we know he takes them things. So like I wouldn't be surprised if they were getting that many attempts up even at that time.
Yeah, and then in the entirety of the 2019-20 season, they averaged 45 a night. So I'm sure they were at 50 at some stretch of that
when
year.
They literally traded their center. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's. Could you imagine if they like, just say they made the finals that bubble year, like. They might have changed like basketball how it looks today, man. Like a lot of teams might just be like, let's just get, big wings that can run the 5 and just space the hell out of the floor.
Like, I'm still sad that team didn't last as long. That Houston team was such a fun experiment, and it was not built to win a title, but like it was fun. They kept AD out of the paint, so their credit. They kept AD. It might have been AD's choice, but.
To guard Russ. No, AD was still in that paint. He was still in the paint because he was guarding Russ. He was daring Russ to shoot. That's where it failed. If they had another guard.
I meant when the Rockets were on defense. I meant AD was taking all the turnaround mid-range jumpers. He was just still going in.
if they had a guard that could shoot, that series could have been more interesting than what it was, maybe. But Russ just that was post MVP. He wasn't shooting the same. But he had an amazing season that year, like very underrated.
Definitely.
That's one of my favorite versions of Russell Westbrook because he stopped taking just the dumb threes. Like there were a lot of games where he wasn't taking threes. He would just take his middies and he'd get to the bucket. And he shot like 47, 48% from the field.
It should have lasted longer. It was a good fit. I think it was a good fit. They ended up committing a little too hard to it.
It was a bold experiment that kind of worked. Like they won a playoff series, and they pretty much got knocked out the same like place where they were the last year they had Chris Paul. So bold decision, I guess, was cool.
It's like I never made the connection until now, but it's almost like what the Raptors could have been if we actually had shooters before we had Podol. It's like a collection of a bunch of guys that are just on the wing with a couple of guards. But it's like they actually built the roster correctly.
Like a lesser version of, because obviously you don't have a Harden or a Russell Westbrook, but you still got a good player. Freddie was an all-star. Pascal was all NBA caliber. Like, yeah. Yeah.
Imagine a world where we're just on stream and just breaking. The Raptors made a trade. Oh my god! Please.
I don't know if I can take that live on stream.
Pick a direction. Just pick a direction.
And something, man. Give me an extension. Give me a trade. Give me something. Something to know that we're not going to lose all them boys for free next summer.
God.
It's a problem.
Do y'all want to react to this ESPN NBA survey?
Sure, hit me with it. I have not seen it.
Okay. So 15 insiders place votes. One is for the best player right now. Who will be the best player in 5 years? We got who will be the MVP this season. Who will be the rookie of the year? Wait, who will be the best rookie not named Victor in 5 years? What level will Wemby's game be at in 5 years? Where will Dame be at the start of next season? Where will Harden be at the start of next season? Which team had the best offseason? Which team had the worst offseason? And what was the most surprising move of the offseason? Oh, there's one more. What was the most impactful change of the CBA? I don't really care about that, to be honest. I don't know if y'all do.
No,
who will win the East, the West? And I think that's it. Yeah, 12 things, 11, not including the CBA thing. Okay. Who do you guys think they picked to win MVP?
Luka Doncic.
That seems like that's probably the pick I would go with. Yeah. Seems like the media pick.
Okay, there were 2 guys that had votes. Giannis had 2 votes. Nikola Jokic had 13.
Damn, they expected Jokic to get another one. I thought they had to give it to somebody new. I think it goes to somebody new. I like the people that are making the Tatum pick right now. I think that's a good pick.
Actually,
yeah, I agree.
I read the wrong question. That was for best player in the NBA. Best player
I was
in the
about
NBA.
to say, yeah, best player in the NBA. That makes sense that they'd say Jokic.
Yeah.
Who will be the best player in 5 years, though? That's the next question.
In 5 years.
Tyrese Halliburton, easy. No, I'm lying. One is, yeah, I think that'll also be Luka.
Luka had 6 votes. He was the top vote getter. Anthony Edwards was second with 3 votes.
I like
Jokic had 2. Wemby had 2. Shea had 1. Jason Tatum had 1 vote.
Okay.
Wemby, the best player in the league year 5, is kind of insane.
Great, right?
It is crazy.
Okay, now we have the MVP. 5 guys got votes.
I still think Luka or Tatum is the guy this year.
Yeah.
Devin Booker might get a vote or 2.
Nah, I'm staying on Luka.
Luka does not have a vote.
That's crazy.
Tatum the guy? Don't tell me.
Jokic.
My pick was Giannis. Like my actual MVP pick. But
Jokic had 9 votes to lead the way. Giannis had 2. Tatum had 2. Devin Booker did have 1, Gabe, and Donovan Mitchell had 1 vote.
Mitchell, that's crazy.
He's not winning MVP.
nuts.
He's a really good pick.
Okay, question 4. Who will be the best rookie from this class in 5 years not named Wemby?
5 years, give me Scoot.
I think Scoot's an easy pick there. I would like
Scoot.
Honestly, if it wasn't Scoot, I almost the second most. Dude, I would love if it was like Amin or something crazy like that.
Good eye, Gabe. Good eye. You guys are on par. Scoot had 11 votes, so ran away with this one. Amin had 3, and Asar had 1 vote. So
Makes
the
sense.
Thompson twins cleared the rest of the 15 votes. Okay, this is a weird question. What level will Wemby's game be at in 5 years? The options are All-Star, MVP caliber, or All-NBA.
5 years, give me all NBA.
Yeah, all NBA makes sense if he goes to projection.
I agree with you guys. They gave him 10 votes for All-Star, so they think All-Star is the most likely one, which I think that's like his.
That's fair.
That'll probably be like his floor, to be honest. Like that's a safe. Damn, they're a safe vote.
Yeah.
This is weird because MVP caliber had 3 votes and All NBA had 2. So more guys think he'll be an MVP than All NBA caliber, I guess. But 6, where will Damian Lillard be at the start of next season?
Portland.
Still up in Oregon.
Yeah, Portland had 9 votes. Miami had 6. No other team had a vote. Maybe this was done before the Raptors news or something, or maybe they just don't believe
Masai doesn't make trades, bro.
Yeah. Where will James Harden be at the start of next season?
Philadelphia.
Yeah, that man is still running the streets of Philly.
Yeah,
Clippers are probably the next highest, but
Philly has 13 votes. The Clippers have 2. No other team had a vote, which I don't see another like scenario where James Harden would be at if it's not Philadelphia, to be honest. Next. Which team had the best offseason? A lot of teams got votes here.
Give me the Lakers.
Well, I was going to go with the Lakers, so I will go with Boston. I think a lot of people are really high on Boston after this offseason.
Those would be my top 2. The Spurs actually were the highest vote getter. I guess Wemby just holds that much weight.
Bro.
Just
this
off
is crazy Wemby glazing.
Crazy.
No doubt.
Boston was second with 3 votes. Then we got the Warriors with 2, which I don't like that. I don't like that at all. The Lakers with 2. The Bucks with 2. The Grizzlies with 1, and the Suns with 1 vote.
The Bucks getting votes I get because they had a lot to lose and they really didn't. But
yeah,
I don't like they're only really good for the short term. I think long term they're just so questionable right now. So they didn't really do anything to strengthen their future.
Well, it's like when you get asked the best off season, like that doesn't really like.
Yeah, this wasn't off season where like there wasn't a lot of big free agents. So like when some of the biggest free agents are guys who could be exiting and they don't, like you really did the best you could do. Is almost how I view that.
You avoided a disaster type of off season like that. Best though, I don't know about that. Next, we got which team had the worst off season?
Miami Heat.
Oh, that's a good shout. That's a really good shout. Miami, they kind of did a whole lot of nothing.
They lost a lot of guys. Didn't really replace them.
Replaced him with Josh Richardson.
Honestly, though, besides them, we talked about it on here, bro. Houston sold.
The Raptors got the most votes.
I'm not. I love it. I love it.
I'm not mad at it.
The Raptors.
Not mad at it.
Toronto got 5 votes. Philly got 4. Miami got 2. Then the Bulls got 1. The Rockets got 1. The Suns got 1. Washington Wizards got 1 vote. I don't like the Washington Wizards hate, man. I don't like that.
I don't know how you can think they had a bad offseason. I mean, I guess if someone really doesn't like the Beal trade, but I don't know. They did about as good as they were going to do there.
Bro, you got a $50 million no trade clause player who's not even top 20 off your roster. That's a phenomenal offseason.
For real.
Real talk. What was the most surprising move of the offseason?
That's a tough question in an offseason where basically everyone re-signed with the team that they were already with.
Don't think of just signings, though. Think of trades.
Yeah.
Maybe coaching.
Most surprising move.
Give me the Marcus Smart trade.
Oh, well, I was honestly going to go with like the Porzingis trade in the same vein, but it's like I was going to – that's crazy that I thought of the same move from a different angle. I'll throw a different name in the hat, so I'll go with the Beal trade just because it's kind of redundant with Booker.
Yeah, I'm surprised that didn't get any votes, to be honest, but the top one with 7 votes was the Smart KP trade. That's what it says here. Chris Paul to the Warriors had 4 votes.
Oh, why did I not think of that? Yeah, that's a great shout.
Chris Paul to the Warriors, and then this says Houston signings. So everything around did this offseason, they also had 4 votes.
Okay, I like that.
Next is the CBA question. I still don't know a lot of the ins and outs of the CBA, I'll be honest.
The most impactful part has to be the 65-game requirement, bro.
I don't even think that got a vote. No.
That's insane.
That is crazy, actually.
So the top vote was the second apron rule.
Okay.
The tax thing. That had 10 votes, which is crazy.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The new extension rules got 2 votes. The new salary floor got 2 votes. Then the in-season tournament got 1.
Okay. Yeah, second tax apron makes sense.
Thanks. I think this is the last quit. Yeah. Okay, so who will win the East, who will win the West, and who will win the NBA championship?
Popular pick for the East has got to be the Celtics.
It's so Boston.
Okay. Boston had 9 votes. The Bucks had 6. No other team had votes.
No surprise there.
Popular team in the West has got to be the Nuggets.
Yeah, they voted Jokic as best player in the league and MVP. They definitely picked Denver.
Denver with 10. The Suns had 3 votes. The Warriors had 2. No Lakers on here. I don't know how I feel about that.
I don't hate that.
If you got Curry on the roster, you got a chance, bro.
And then who will win the NBA Finals? 4 teams got votes here.
Give me the Nuggets.
Well, it's got to be out of those 4 teams. So I'll go with Boston. I guess
Boston,
it was 5 teams for conference.
Boston led the way with 6 votes. Denver had 5. The Bucks had 2, and the Suns had 2.
Okay.
Interesting to say the least. I don't know. I want to see the I was looking for it. It hasn't got done yet, but that GM survey that always gets done. I want to see I want to see what the GM say.
The Jokic and Wemby glazing is fucking egregious. Wow.
Yeah, I still don't know who my MVP pick is.
Bro,
I don't know if I want to go Jokic though. I don't think I'm going to go
Jokic. I haven't locked in my award winners yet either. I'm not sure.
After this season, bro, Giannis is taking back the best player in the world label. I'll stand on that.
I wouldn't doubt it.
I'm still a Giannis best in the world guy. So
at this point, it literally feels like 95% of people are like, "Oh, it's Jokic," and it's like not even close. So I'm like, bro,
it's definitely close. Like, I have Jokic right now, but 2 weeks into the season, I might say Giannis.
It's like a 1A, 1B type of thing.
It really is. No one's close to those two, in my opinion. Right. There's a discernible gap there, but there's definitely not a discernible gap between Jokic or Giannis one way or the other.
My 3 to 5, like Curry, Embiid, and Luka, are a lot closer to each other
damn near interchangeable.
They are like those 3 to 5 are way closer to each other than either of them are to Jokic and Giannis. I think
Definitely.
I think those guys then going down to the 6 through 10 of like KD, Booker, like Tatum, those guys, then they're like clearly like a step below them.
Dame's coming home to the
Kong.
6. One can hope, man.
Damn, I got pulled up late to the stream, man. You missed the redraft.
Hey, he's coming in for the after show. He knows the good part of the stream.
Yeah, he knows the vibes. Dame in Portland. I mean, Dame in Toronto would be so just interesting.
No, that would be nice. That would be
I'd watch a lot. I'd watch like every game with glee, even if it's doomed to fail and it's not going to get a championship. The way they're going right now ain't going to get a championship. So like at least I can have fun. You know what I'm saying?
I applaud the fans that like watch their team when they're like bad or there's just nothing exciting because like it's tough for me. I can't lie. Like the 2021 season when Boston was very just mild and was like a 7-8 seed, it was tough for me to watch games. Like I couldn't really get up to watch Jeff Teague and Tristan Thompson and Aaron Nesmith and Romeo Langford and those guys just get minutes. Like it was tough. I can't lie.
Yeah, last season was some of the least Raptors basketball I ever watched because like the team was so mediocre, and even if the team is bad, but there's like pieces that are developing that you can like watch. Everybody on the team had just been there for so long. Like I've seen enough of OG playing over the past couple of years, Pascal, Gary Trent, like all of them have been around forever. And then beyond that, like the midseason acquisition was Jakob Poeltl, who once again used to be on the team, but even then, like, is he gonna draw me in to watch? I know exactly what he's gonna do. Like,
you didn't really you didn't get to experience like the really bad Raptors teams. Like, Dev might have been watching basketball back then, but I know Gabe started watching around like 15, 16-ish. So
yeah,
last season was definitely tough to watch. Kong, I'm there with you. Like, and like you say, Gabe, like everyone was just so redundant. And at least the year before, like, yes, we were better, but even when we weren't playing great, like Scotty was there. There was a lot of optimism around Scotty. He had a really good rookie season. If we would have continued that last year, the vibes might have been a lot different. Because even if it would have been bad, at least there was some vibes there with Scotty. Because that was the big vibe carry during year one when he was drafted. But that just wasn't there last year at all. It was negative vibes around Scotty for the most part. So it just really didn't help at all.
I'm telling you, man, reminds me a lot of Tatum rookie year to sophomore year. So that's the same thing. Like Tatum didn't get worse his second year. It's just like people were expecting like that really nice jump, and he didn't make it. So
to be honest, a similar situation with like there just being so many other guys that were taking shots and opportunities that it was hard to develop. And once those guys left is when you saw Tatum like for real blossom into the star he's become. So get them guys out of there. Come on.
No doubt, man. No doubt.
One step is done.
Go undrafted. Yeah, Scotty came a few years too late for that.
Bruh. I think he's talking about last week with the ultimate NBA fantasy draft. He didn't get drafted, but at first, I saw that. I'm like, 2018. What is he talking about?
What about Detroit though? Like, I'm not a Pistons fan, man. Like,
are you though?
I'm a Pistons enjoyer. I love Cade Cunningham.
We'll speak in January when the Pistons are playing well, and he's been to a few Pistons games.
Yeah,
everybody
come on here with a K jersey.
You'll have a bit more ammo then.
I had the Pistons is better than the Knicks last year, but that's one of my worst age takes of all time.
The Lions. So I work for the Lions. I enjoy Lions football now. I had no attachment to the Lions before this season.
He's a Saints fan, but you might want to switch to Detroit these days. God.
Saints have been – look, last week was rough for sure because Carr got hurt, and then Jameis couldn't put the team in scoring position until the last drive, and then fucking Groupie won him. God. It's all good, though. Carr's going to miss like a game or two. Jameis is solid enough. our schedule is so easy. If we should be like, if Carr misses 3 games, I think we should go 2-1, which I'll take that because our division absolutely stinks. It's bad.
Yeah, that is a really weak division to say the least.
It's bad.
Should be chilling.
First 2 home games in Detroit, though. Love the atmosphere, man. Those fans they come to show out for sure.
Yeah, Ford Field is a wonderful place to be, bro. I was just there about a month and a half ago, so it's crazy inside. I was outside; it kind of blends into the city, bro. Like I went in, I'm like, bro,
yeah, it's a really nice stadium.
This is my first time ever in a dome, so it was wild.
So you never been to like a Colts game or anything, huh?
Nah, never been to Lucas Oil, Paul Brown, and Cincy is open air.
Yep.
I've been to a Steelers game, so I went up to. It's not called that anymore, but when I went, I think it was still Heinz. And
they changed the name.
Wait, actually, was that last season or 2 seasons ago? I don't remember which one, but either way, yeah, like that's open air. It was cold as hell out there, but yeah, domes are real cool.
Yeah,
domes are dope. They're dope.
Yeah, they're nice. I've been in Rogers Center a couple times in Toronto, but no, it's definitely a different environment. That's for sure.
We got to get you to a Cowboys game someday. You just got to like give us a review of AT&T because I've heard it's insane.
Yeah, no, I definitely got to get down there at some point because my buddy RL is a diehard Cowboys fan. He is to football what I am to basketball in terms of fandom. So we'll definitely be down there one day. There's no doubt about it. So
Devin goes to Jerry World.
That'd be dope. Me and my friend, because he's an LSU fan, we've been trying to plan for like 3 years to like go down to like a weekend, go to a LSU game, and then the next day go down to New Orleans, go to a Saints game, but just never worked out. So hopefully we do that someday because I gotta get to the Superdome. Like that is a non-negotiable. I gotta make it there for a game.
For sure, that'll be a good experience.
I definitely want to go to TD Garden someday as a fan.
For sure.
Just to see the Celtics play there. I've seen them play on the road, never at home. Yeah,
I gotta get to Scotiabank, bro. Gotta get up there. It ain't that far of a drive. I mean, it's like 8 hours, but
no, it's not.
8 hours ain't bad, man. 8 hours is not bad.
No, not at all. No, it's a nice spot. It's a really nice.
Might mess around and fly, bro, because I don't know if I'm going to be in the car like that.
Now,
doing Detroit, bro, doing it as a day trip, didn't stay overnight or nothing. Bro.
That's tough.
Bro. And the event didn't end until like midnight. I had work at noon the next day.
That's tough. That is tough.
Yeah.
I'll be tired after game days, man. Just being at the stadium that long, driving home.
Yeah. It was all worth it, though. I got to see Logan Paul when I was up there, so
the GOAT.
Everything was okay.
That's fair. Yeah, going to Toronto would be nice, though. Go see the Raptors play.
Yeah, it's a nice downtown area down there.
I'll go as long as Dev flies out. If Dev flies out, I'm there.
Gotta be. Like, imagine going to Canada and not like linking up. That would just be like that ruined the purpose.
No, that would definitely have to be arranged for sure. Even though you'd get there faster than I would, but that's okay.
It's off principle.
No, definitely. I've been to Toronto enough times now. I'm so comfortable going there.
It still amazes me how like huge Canada is. Like, it still like doesn't seem fathomable to me. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's just a massive space of nothing for 90% of it. Like, I mean, everyone lives in over 50% of people live in a few-hour radius of Toronto, and then outside of the Montreal area and the Vancouver area, like, there ain't nothing. Like, there's a few other major cities between Calgary, Edmonton, and Winnipeg, and that's it. There's There's nothing. I mean, I live in field country. Like you drive for 10, 12 hours, and unless you're going the way of Calgary or Edmonton, it's just farms and forest. That's all it
Bro,
is.
all I know about those cities is like hockey and wrestling, bro. When I hear Calgary, I think of the Flames and Bret Hart. When I think of Winnipeg, it's like Chris Jericho, Kenny Omega, and the Jets.
Yeah,
Bro.
I mean, that's about all there is.
Edmonton, though, I actually know some hockey players, like because the Oilers, they had. I know Connor McDavid. Come on, at the end, didn't Gretzky play for them?
Yeah, that was the main.
I know he played for a couple teams though.
He
Like,
started
he
there, and then he
was
went
on
to the
Kings.
Kings. Yeah. No, that's kind of the main things for those spots, anyways. That whole province, Calgary and Edmonton, is oil country, so that's kind of the other thing they're known for.
That Alberta oil, bro.
It's all about that Alberta oil, though most of it's way up north, but there is still a good chunk up around there. That's the one random spot that's actually inhabited up north. It's like 4.5 hours north of Calgary, and that's actually got people. But yeah, Winnipeg is like that, because when I'm in school, I'm in Regina, which is about 5 hours west of Winnipeg, and they just bicker back and forth, and it's like Regina will say it's shit, but we're better than Winnipeg. And that's how it goes.
Yeah, Connor McDavid is crazy. I think when the Blue Jackets, when we played Connor McDavid's team last year, like I don't think he played, and I was so mad. Yeah, so this is supposed to be like the best. This is like supposed to be the best guy in the league, and he's just not playing. I think he was hurt or something.
Bro, I know like 5 hockey players, like him, Austin Matthews, Sidney Crosby,
nice.
Like Alex Ovechkin. Bro, I might
Crosby's
be
still
playing.
playing.
That, bro.
Ovechkin, I think he's still playing. Yeah.
Bro, my guy was bro. Like, there's some guys that I think retired. Actually, bro, if Marc-Andre Fleury's not still playing, I knew him. I knew PK Subban.
Pretty sure he's still playing.
I don't think PK's. I think he's done.
I think Pecorine retired too. I don't know about.
Yeah, he's gone.
I can name a lot of Blue Jackets players because I work for them. But
yeah.
Oh yeah, they had what's his name? Johnny Gaudreau. Yeah.
So is Matthews better than McDavid? I'm a very, very big time like hockey casual.
To most people, no. McDavid's kind of the consensus number one.
Matthews is nice though. He did play when we played Toronto. We beat them, but
bro said Blue Jackets players is insane. Bro, he literally worked for them. What do you want him to do?
Like, not know the players.
Guilty by association.
Yeah, we were terrible.
Yeah,
is Cam Atkinson still in the league?
Yeah, pretty sure
not. Yeah, not in
Bro, but Sergei Bobrovsky's like nice. Isn't he in Florida or something? He was hella nice, right?
I think he was. Yeah, I think he was. At least last year. I don't know where he is this year. I don't know if he's still there, but
Bobrovsky's the go to Columbus, bro. I don't care what anybody says.
He's still in Florida. Okay.
Bro, when Columbus, my biggest hockey fan friend from back home, we watched Game 4 of the Jackets versus the Lightning, like together, bro. I was a super casual, but his reaction when they completed that sweep as the 8 seed, bro, that was a crazy game to watch as a casual.
That shit still gets talked about like within the organization because it was just that crazy.
That's like the only, bro. That's like the only playoff series I think they've ever won.
I think so. And that's crazy too because Tampa Bay's been like damn good for like 8 years or something like that.
Yeah, they've been really good.
I remember I went down to like Tampa and I just realized like it was like right around the Stanley Cup. I think they were actually in it. It was 2022. Yeah. Like I just realized like how much they actually love that team. Like, oh.
Yeah. Yeah, they've built up a pretty passionate fan base over the last decade. I can't say that it was that passionate previous to that. Maybe it was timing because I was there for a game like a bit over a decade ago, and they were playing the Canadiens that night, and over half the stadium was Canadians fans, which was a great environment when they wanted a shootout. And you're walking back to the hotel across the road, and the hundreds of Habs fans are out here chanting. But Canadians fans also travel very well because that's how that fan base is.
There are a lot of games in Columbus like that, like when Detroit would come to town.
Right.
Red Wings fans, I think
Big fan base.
I think Canadians fans really traveled good to Detroit. Like
I feel like there's no way
Columbus.
Penguins fans don't travel well.
Penguins, bro, basically it was a home game.
Because they travel well to the Steelers fans travel well to Bengals games, and I'm sure they travel well to Browns games. Pittsburgh fans travel good.
Yeah, basically a home game.
Man. Pray for Montreal. That'll be the biggest thing to happen in Montreal since the screw job, bro.
Yeah, I remember when I was a kid, like 2010 or something like that. I think they made like the conference finals or some shit, and I don't know if they've been any good since.
Yeah, they made the finals a couple of years ago, but
he said he doesn't know what the Montreal screw job is. That's devastating. That's devastating. Listen,
he knows.
It's like the Montreal screw job is like the biggest event in wrestling history, bro.
Talking about the Royals. You think that's the biggest event in wrestling history?
Not the biggest show, but like as far as like behind the scenes, like what's the most like talked about like scandal or like this shit happened? Like, bro, it's been over 20 years and motherfuckers do not let that shit die.
Bret Hart would never let that go.
No, he won't. That and his hatred for Bill Goldberg, he'll never let it go.
Not Goldberg.
That's half my Canadian knowledge, bro, is literally just knowing wrestlers from Canada. There's so many.
There's a lot. There's a lot, bro. Edge is from Toronto.
Edge and Christian are the goats of Toronto, bro.
I thought Jericho. Oh, nah. Toronto, yeah. I thought you were talking about Canada overall. So you got to throw Jericho in there. What did Brett say about Kawhi?
I don't know. I've never heard him talking about Kawhi Leonard.
That's a random crossover right there.
He's talking about Bret Hart talking about Kawhi Leonard.
Hitman Bret Hart.
The only complaint I heard about Kawhi and the Raptors today was people saying that Sam Mitchell was still shitting on us on some media platform, yet we still let him come on TSN, so that makes sense.
Bruh, you see what Stephen A. said about, like, if Dame's going to go to Toronto, he might as well stay in Portland. Bruh, shut up. Dame with Portland was still, like, not even close to the playoffs, bro. If Dame is in Toronto, they're a top 4 seed minimum.
You know, Stephen A., he's another guy. Like, I don't value his basketball opinions.
Yeah, definitely not. I mean, it's still better than his baseball opinions last week, but it's not.
Just Stephen A's had a very lately. I haven't been feeling like why he's been in the news. The whole Max Kellerman stuff. I'm just like,
yeah.
Between like the Max stuff and he was like trying to stir up more stuff between like Skip and Shannon and all that, and it's like, bro, like. And, like, I don't mess with Skip personally. I mean,
I don't either.
I respect he's been able to make his money, but, like, even still, like, I feel like Shannon himself handled the whole split, like, so professionally. And then, like, I feel like Stephen A. was just trying to make so much drama out of it, I felt like, when it's like the two guys actually involved with that shit were, like, professional about it.
It's like he was trying to get clicks out of it almost for his podcast and shit. And look. The whole Max Kellerman stuff, I haven't had a chance to really talk about this. I've just been having my thoughts, just thinking about it, maybe texting in a group chat. But I understand as a professional, you're on television, you're trying to have the best sports talk show in the world. I get that. And if you feel like it was stale, that's fine. But to go and say, like, the guy is not a journalist, he's not an athlete. Well, Stephen A., you haven't written anything in like 10 years. nor been an active NBA writer or whatever since like the fucking Philadelphia's Allen Iverson days. You weren't a professional athlete either. Though he played in like college or something, but you're not a professional athlete either. Why should I value your opinions? And a lot of the times you say you have sources and shit, you get called out. You just got called out recently by Lonzo Ball. So like, we don't really like value your opinion that much either, man. Like, I'm just like, it was very hypocritical of him to say that. That's my only thing. Like,
no, I thought Max was good too. Like he had some entertaining takes. Like, I mean, were they always the greatest takes? Like the Iguodala take, or like the Kawhi is more clutch than Kobe, and like all that. Like it was good content, regardless how you feel about the take. Like he had good content and very memorable moments on that show.
it wasn't bad. Like, he was better than Skip. I'll say that much. Way better than Skip Bayless.
Yeah.
As far as like him and Stephen A, like way better. And he's better than anybody he's brought on since then. Like
right.
Mad Dog. Like you can just tell like the type of guys that Stephen A. Smith wants to work with. And that's fine. This is his show. He's like the face of ESPN Talk TV and stuff like that's fine. But don't be on like one, Max has been off the show for like 3-4 years. Been off the show for a while. This man just got laid off by ESPN. He ain't said nothing about Stephen A. He never said anything about Stephen A. actually. So it's like, why just like continue to throw dirt on this man's name? Like he has not done nothing wrong. So even if you're asked about it, still be professional, man. Like, come on now. And like you said, Gabe, like the whole Shannon and Skip thing that he's like milking, like that's just very unprofessional of him to do that as well. I didn't even think about that till you brought it up for real.
Dude, it was so weird. Like, I don't know, because Shannon is a like really entertaining analyst. He's definitely like best utilized in football. Like some of his basketball takes, I'm like, and I felt like half the time on Undisputed, somehow everything would just become about like LeBron because Skip's like his biggest hater and Shannon's like his biggest fan. But as a football analyst specifically, like Shannon was so good. So I don't know, like it seemed like Stephen A. literally just brought him in just to like capitalize on that drama, and it's like, I mean, it's corny. Get your bag however you can, but it's like it's so contrived.
Yeah, that's why money and now clicks on social media is like the root of all evil.
Yeah, unfortunately. Stephen A. and Shannon have as much chemistry as the Jets offense. That's great.
That's facts. That's facts.
Literally, I will say, like the only other good first take guest was like JJ Redick. I don't know how often he's still like on there because I don't watch the show.
And that's just because JJ, like, he's very Max Kellerman like he's willing to call Stephen A. Smith out on his bullshit.
Yeah.
So JJ played in the NBA, so he's probably more respected when it comes to NBA takes than Max was in Stephen A.'s eyes. But yeah.
I'd agree with that.
I haven't watched First Take in like 5 or 6 years. So.
Dude, when it comes to shows like that, like it's fun until you realize it's like the same rotating 5 topics. I think First Take's like a little better about it, like as opposed to like an Undisputed, because like Shannon especially was so entertaining, but I can't watch just conversations about Tom Brady, LeBron, and Aaron Rodgers over and over and over day after day. And the Cowboys a ton. Like I can't listen to these same topics day after day after day after day after day. The Jordan LeBron debate day after day after day. Like after a certain point, I need something different. But that's what they provide, and that's why like creators like us seem to do the best when we're talking about the shit they don't talk about. So maybe it's good that they don't talk about other teams. I don't know.
Facts. No talk show is going to talk about Robert Williams as a high post passer 3 weeks in a row.
Facts.
Like nobody's going to talk about that.
No doubt.
No team is going to talk about Jaren Jackson Jr. taking the Grizzlies from a bad to mediocre defense to top 5 in the league just with his impact after missing the first 20 games of the season like I will.
They probably won't talk about the Grizzlies unless John Morant does something off the court, to be honest.
Yeah, they'll talk about John Wick. That's about it.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah, that's why I like having this space, and we control what we talk about, and we find what our viewers like to watch, and we're not talking about Michael Jordan and LeBron or the Lakers 24/7 or stuff like that. Like we talk about random shit like Jaren Jackson's defensive impact and the Raptors and why them letting Fred VanVleet go is just why would you do this, and rant like Dev will give his Rockets rants and we'll have Trae Young and Tyrese Halliburton debates. Like we just do shit like that. So yeah. I don't know if the game will ever fully swing to like content creators like being the driving force, but I feel like it's gotten a decent pace over like the last 5 years or so.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of room for the independent creators of the world. That's for sure. There's a large audience for that. There's no doubt about it. And there's a lot of a gap in the mainstream creative economy as well. That shit's just not being covered.
I do think there's almost this like crossover now though, where like some people are both, because a lot of the TV analysts and a lot of the players like have their own podcast or YouTube channels or platforms at this point. So we're like, even that content creator space that was originally independent now has become a lot more like commercialized, and it is like the people who are already at the top than just making that type of content. But I guess the only saving grace is that most of those seem to be interview style shows versus like analysis style shows, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true.
Definitely. I can't think of many like podcasts that are like analysis style. I think Zach Lowe's might be more like that. I haven't really tuned into his a lot, but heard his spot's pretty good for like news and stuff. But
yeah, but like the real big ones, like maybe Draymond's is, I don't know how many people he interviews versus how much he just talks about ball, but
it's
like
a
especially like Paul George's podcast seems like mostly like an interview show. Jeff Teague's interview show, stuff like that.
JJ's is, they do drop NBA stuff, but like the bulk of their content is interviews. So
yeah.
The first time I watched a JJ episode, I think was like when he did that really big Jimmy Butler interview.
I remember I was
great interview.
So working at Amazon, I just needed something to like listen to, and found that, and I'm like, damn, this motherfucking JJ is actually like not an asshole, and he's a good interviewer. He tapped in. Yeah, I've been watching Paul George's like podcast the last couple of days. That's why I made that tweet yesterday, and I'm like, some NBA players have really good co-hosts, and some have really bad co-hosts.
Yeah,
they don't add a lot. I'm not gonna specify which co-host I think of on Paul George's podcast is not good. One of them's fine. Like I like he actually sounds like he like is a basketball guy. The other guy seems like he's there for more like entertainment, which I understand. But what do you bring to the table? I'm not 100% sure, but it works. Paul George actually has a really good podcast, and he's not a bad host for real. Knuckleheads is a really good one too. Still haven't watched Jeff T's like in full, just clips.
The clips are so good though. But I will say when it comes to the clips, like his co-hosts usually don't add that much. It's usually just Jeff being funny.
Yeah,
what are you talking about, Rick?
I'd have to watch one in full to get a full grasp of that one. But from the clips, it definitely seems like that. That might just be what they're picking, but
the Evan Turner and Iggy one was so good. Like I might watch that one again because that was some great basketball talk.
Yeah, I still got to watch that one. That's definitely going to be a good one.
Might be my favorite JJ podcast to date. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah, I could
that'd be interesting. I don't think I've ever like watched like an Andre Iguodala full interview.
Bro, him and ET, like they're just so funny together. But they both know ball and they talk basketball very well. It was one episode in particular. God, who was it? God, which episode was it? Anyways, it was one episode. He just wasn't adding nothing. to the interview, man. He was taking stuff away, and I just didn't like it at all. I forget whose it was too. Yeah, I don't even remember, but he was asking some just bad questions. It was DeMar DeRozan's. He was asking terrible questions. Like DeMar was talking how he's like the biggest Kobe sneaker guy, probably like in the world type stuff, right? And then like 5 minutes later, dude's gonna ask him. He's gonna ask him another question about his Kobe's. He's gonna be like, "So do you still collect?" Like he just kind of said like he still collects Kobe's and he still has like every single pair. So I'm like, not taking it away. He asked a question about like his dad. Like we need to interview his dad. Like DeMar's dad passed away a couple years ago, bro.
Yeah.
Like,
It's so to such.
Just be a little bit more prepared. He's kind of funny in a corny way, but that interview was just like he wasn't bringing anything to the table.
I don't know about that. That's bro.
That was
Still probably not worse questions than Charlemagne, dog.
Oh no, not even close. Not even close.
Like I don't know. Like, what's the worst question you ever heard in an interview? Because
the one that Charlemagne asked Logic, bro. That's by far the worst question.
That's the worst. Okay.
Not repeating it, but that's got to be the worst question, man.
I'm pretty high up there with that, but there's a couple of contenders. Because of the subject matter, that's probably the worst one.
Gotta be.
There's some really bad questions though, like like when they asked Westbrook, like, did you guys lose this game or did the Jazz win? Huh?
Somebody asked Chris Paul, like, they had just lost like game 5 and they were down 3-2, and they were like, "So are you guys gonna be back here for game 7?" He's like, "What the fuck do you want me to say?" Like, "No, we're gonna lose in 6."
Bro, what did they ask LeBron where he just got up and left?
I forgot.
I don't
even know if that was a bad question or Brown was just pissed.
Yeah, I don't remember that one that well.
I feel like I remember him saying like, "Be better," and then he just like left.
Sounds like something Pop said about 10 times in press conferences.
Facts.
What are you gonna do next game? Be better. Make more shots.
Yeah. Who interviewed Mariah Carey or J-Lo? If you're talking about Charlemagne, then I don't know.
It has to be Charlemagne, bro. He asked.
That's a bad conversation.
There's some other terrible.
He has no
questions.
filter. He has no filter at all. You see him and Drake was like beefing recently.
Such like a random like.
So random, bro. It
why
was
do you
funny,
care,
bro. It was comedy.
Bro. Like, he really asked Logic that shit. Like, why would you ask that question?
Like, it shouldn't even be funny because like that's like very like, why would you ask that? But it's just like, it's funny because it's like, why would you ask that, bro?
It's genuinely
like Logic had every
it's
reason.
So
like,
bad you have to.
Logic had every reason. He had every reason to punch him in the face if he wanted to. Like nobody would have been mad. Deb, do you know what we're talking about?
Yeah, I do.
Oh yeah, okay. I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Not repeating it, but that was just like that's actually a class of its own as like the worst question on live, whatever, live camera, live mic. Like that's the worst question ever.
Yeah, if anyone ever matches that, there's problems.
Big time problems. Big time. I have to buy bottles for sure. That is a crazy guy, man. Crazy guy. Jackie Long, he's okay. That interview just really rubbed me the wrong way. But other than that, he's fine.
When they asked Kyrie, what kind of role does LeBron play as a father figure on the Cavs?
No, such a Kyrie. That was a bad question, and Kyrie gave the best answer. Like you could give that. He's like, I have one father, Frederick Irving. The classic one is when Torian Prince had to explain to the reporter how to rebound. That was a classic.
That is such a classic. That's hilarious.
He said interviewed the guy.
Oh, LeBron walked out of the interview in the finals. It was after that game 1 in 2018. They kept asking him, like, basically about the J.R. Smith play. And they were like,
Right.
what was going on in his head? And he's like, I don't know what's going on in his head. He's like, what was your version? The version you saw? Like,
Such a stupid question.
That's how you know Braun was fed up, because he usually gives like very insightful answers, and that's just like, okay, we get it. JR messed up. We understand.
dude, I'm pretty sure that's when he was wearing that suit with the shorts, bro.
The shorts, yeah, had the shades on. Didn't he have like a briefcase too?
I think so.
That's a classic meme, underrated meme.
That's an all-time NBA fit. That's like up there with like the Kuzma fit.
Oh, the pink, long pink shirt.
Yeah, the sweater. I don't know. There's some pretty iconic Russ fits. Doesn't Russ have a fit where he's wearing like a construction worker vest or something?
I was thinking of that one. Yeah, Russ has some like infamous fits, to say the least.
I don't know about a classic Dirk fit, but Dirk walking in with the foil wrap plate, that's a classic.
Tim Duncan accepted his MVP. Classic. If you go back and look at like, I think it was like NBA All-Star like 2005, they had like a photo shoot. Bro. Some of the most diabolical fits of all time. But some of them were low-key like tough. Like Joe Johnson was dressed like nice. I think KG had a nice fit on. Like, bro, if you ever get a chance, like, just go back and look at those photos. It was either 2004 or 2005. I don't remember which year.
Bro, I'm just on like a Reddit page of the worst NBA interview questions. Apparently, somebody asked Steph Curry, Steph, do you talk to your wife? What's that like?
It makes you wonder, like, how do some of these people like get jobs as reporters? Like, asking that.
Like, what is their prior experience?
Wardell, why is Kelly so good at dunking? I think I remember that. Like, some reporter like called him Wardell, and he's like, "Why did you do that?"
I seen today, Darius Slay. If reporters call him Darius, like he won't answer a question until they call him Slay. Like don't call me. He's like, don't call me Darius, just call me Slay or Big Play.
Yeah, I could see that from him.
What Shaq asked. You guys are too young to remember when they asked. I actually don't remember that. Wonder what his answer was. Because Ben Wallace was a terrible free throw shooter.
Well, I think I'm going to wrap us up relatively shortly so we don't run too late. But I got two. Who do you guys want to start questions that we didn't get to last week that I want to give you guys this week? The first one being Utah's backcourt between THT, between Jordan Clarkson, between Ochai Agbaji, Keontae George. Who's the two guys that should be starting in the backcourt?
That's a lot of bodies.
It's a lot of bodies.
Give me Keontae George and Ochai Agbaji. All vibes. I think they got a nice high ceiling. I think Agbaji showed like some good flashes last year. I feel like THG's been around for a while, and I'm still not that really sold on his ceiling. Like I I think that was definitely pretty overhyped at points, even if he's shown some solid flashes. And Jordan Clarkson is definitely best utilized off the bench. So now that I've seen a ton from, especially, once a rookie, but not that I've seen a ton, but I think that they probably have the most upside in those two.
I agree with Agbaji. Really like his game. He destroyed my Tar Heels in the national championship. I agree with that. And give me THT solely for the MIP agendas.
It's a good man right there. I'm picking THT as well. I want him to be the starting point this year. Really liked what I saw from him at the point at the end of last season. The 2-guard spot is weird. I want to say Agbaji, but George and Clarkson seems like a weird duo together. Those are two really shot creation heavy guys. But Agbaji does make more sense in the starting lineup. I think he's going to be, and he already is a really good off-ball player, but I think he's going to develop into arguably one of the best purely off-ball players in the league, even if he doesn't improve that much as an on-ball creator, which he might to some extent. But good three-point shooter, really good off-ball movement. I think he makes a lot of sense in the starting lineup. So give me THT and Agbaji. And Clarkson and Keontae George is going to wreak havoc on teams' benches, but I think that makes sense for the starting lineup.
I would really like Keontae George, though. He had a really good summer. Somebody look out for it. Maybe not so much this season, but down the line.
Yeah.
It'd be really, really nice.
Yeah. I don't know how I feel about him yet. He impressed me in Summer League. I'll give him that. I wasn't that high on him heading into the draft. I like him as a three-point shooter, and I think at the very least he'll be that. But there's a lot of things I think he needs to clean up, which he can, but a lot of decision-making needs to be cleaned up. A lot of shot selection needs to be cleaned up. If he's going to continue to take tough shots, he's got to get better at them. And then does he just remain a full-time 2, or does he improve his playmaking and decision-making enough to be a full-time point guard? So we'll see how that goes. I'm sure for Utah's sake, they'd love for him to be a point guard because they don't really have a true guy over there right now, but we'll see how that development goes.
Would you guys take THT in Toronto now?
I definitely would. I 100% would. That's our starting point guard next year.
I just see Colin
I'd rather have him
over.
over. Rather have him over Dennis Schroeder.
FIBA World Cup MVP Dennis Schroeder? Yeah. For sure. Nah, I think THT, if he gets a starting good job, big year. By big year, I mean maybe 14 points a game or something like that. But
yeah.
Big year.
Yeah, I think his assist numbers will jump a bit too. Just he was averaging a bit over 7 once he was at point last year. So yeah, if we can get more of that, that'd definitely be nice. But I'm not hopeful THT is going to start. I think he's probably the odd man out, but I hope they start him.
That will suck. But yeah, it makes sense because they drafted Keontae. They traded for Agbaji. They probably want to see those guys get some.
It just shouldn't be Jordan Clarkson. It definitely should not be Jordan Clarkson.
If it
He's
is,
not utilized in that role.
If it is, I hope he gets moved early on, maybe before the calendar turns.
Yeah, I hope he gets moved regardless. But if I'm not mistaken, they did just pay him, so I'm not sure what's going to go on there.
Okay, after December 15th, please get rid of him.
Yeah, let's hope. Let's hope. The other question that I had for you guys for who should start is in Houston, assuming their 4 other starters are Freddie, Jalen Green, Jabari Smith, and Sengun. Who should be their starting small forward? Terry Eason, Cam Whitmore, Dylan Brooks, or Alman Thompson?
Who do I think it's going to be, or who should it be?
Who should it be? Give me your pick if you're picking the starting small forward.
Give me the Thompson twin if I was picking. It's probably going to be Dylan Brooks, but I would take the Thompson twin personally.
Yeah, I'm really
let your rookies play, man.
I'm right there with you. I really like Whitmore, but just with the amount of players they got up there, he's probably not going to get that spot. Tari Eason, same thing, probably just not going to get that spot. Amon, you should probably have the most stock in as a future prospect because he was the highest pick. So if it wasn't going to be Dylan Brooks, then it would be him. But at least to start the season, I wouldn't be shocked if Dylan Brooks was the starter to start the season, and then by the end of the season, Amon Thompson is your starter because they paid him that money. You probably have to give him that spot at first, but I think it'll be obvious that by at least what's that, like a 5-year contract, 4-year, a 4-year
For Brooks, 4-year.
Yeah, so 4-year, bro. By like at the latest by the end of year 2, Amon Thompson is going to be a better player.
Yeah, that'll be the interesting thing to see because Freddie can be gone after 2 years. So did they let Amon slide into Brooks' spot early, or do they just make Amon sit on the bench until Freddie's gone? We'll see how that turns out. Because it'd be hard to imagine Brooks doesn't start, given they did just give him a bag and he did have a good World Cup. So at least he's coming in with some amount of positivity on a court compared to how we ended last year. But I mean, if Amon starts playing well, like you guys say, I mean, they drafted him so high. He's obviously got a lot of upside. You're only going to let him sit on the bench for so long. So, but at the same time, like, are you trading Brooks with 3 years left in his deal? I mean, someone might take him if he plays well enough this year, but that's not a given. And you're evidently not trading Freddie, most likely. So we'll see how that one pans out.
Let's see who gets traded first between Dylan Brooks and Jeremy Grant.
I can't.
It's got to be Brooks.
Contracts.
Got to be.
Such horrid contracts.
Brooks, once he's a year or two into that deal, is actually going to be pretty lucrative. Once there's 2 years left, like 2 years, it's a declining deal as well. So he's maybe make like 19 and 18 or 18 and 17 those last 2 years. That's actually not going to be a bad deal at all.
They just have so much good young talent. Like, just not getting that opportunity is.
Yeah, I'd much rather Terry Eason be starting, even if Amon Thompson didn't exist and they just didn't sign Brooks. Like, he had a really good year last year. Also was very available, which is nice to see and rare to see from a rookie these days.
You know, I really think if the Rockets didn't offer Dylan Brooks $20 million a year, somebody would have signed him, but not for near that price. And it's not because I don't think Dylan Brooks is a quality basketball player. I just think his value would have been a lot lower, and I think Houston was probably like the outlier. He's like, damn, I can't pass this shit up. I gotta sign this. So
yeah, someone probably would have given him a mid-level, but he probably wouldn't have got more than that. That probably would have been the most. But yeah, Garrett is on the hill that Freddie is going to get traded. I don't know who the heck's going to trade for him, but
it makes sense. One of those guys has to break out eventually. Like, whether it's Jalen Green, whether it's Jabari, whether it's Amon, even if it's Cam Whitmore, because he was projected a lot higher than he ended up going. And we've seen Nova guys just ball out and exceed expectations. But
some Nova
overall, there's a big
Amari Spellman.
Yeah. Not all of them end up being Jalen Brunson and Mikal Bridges, but
thanks.
Yeah, like I don't know. Like, I get from the extent of like the culture setting and getting some veterans in there, but like
it's levels to it, though, man. Like,
they should have got Jeff Green and another guy.
Right. Get guys that are veterans
and like they didn't need Jeff Green and Jock Landale and Freddie and Dylan Brooks. Like,
right.
That was a bit overkill.
Yeah. Dylan Brooks was enough. Like, I mean, not Dylan Brooks. Fred VanVleet was like already kind of pushing it for me. But I can, like, you can talk me more than that than like going and getting Dylan Brooks for the price too, because you're probably the only team bidding that much. And then, like you said, on top of that, you add another vet, Jeff Green. Jock Landale's been in the league for a little bit. Like,
yeah, even with Landale, like I would have assumed them give another year to Garuba. Like, he hasn't been great, but he's shown enough, at least on the defensive end. Why not give him year 3? Like, what else do you have to lose? He was a first-round pick a couple of years ago. You might as well give him one more year.
Dude,
it's not like Landale's coming in and changing your team and playing that much better. And now you're paying him $8 million a year for 4 years. Although, to be fair, actually, that deal's not bad because I think next year is only $1 million guaranteed, like year 2, and then the 2 years after that it's nothing. But still,
I know they're celebrating too. Like, the front office is probably celebrating those moves because let's be honest here. Dylan Brooks did get one up on America. He did get one up on America.
He did. He did.
But he's still that ain't the NBA, pal.
I don't know. Yeah, it's like getting Cam Whitmore was great that he slid that far, but it's like, where's his minutes going to come from? Do they exist? Probably not.
Yeah. I mean, at best, he's going to be the fourth forward because Brooks is going to play. Eason's probably got to be ahead of him at this point, and Jabari Smith's going to be ahead of him. Although I wouldn't be surprised if Jabari Smith sees some time at the 5 this year. We'll see how that goes. But I know there's been talks of them rumbling with that, which I wouldn't hate.
Jabari's summer was very promising. Like,
very.
That's what you want to see from like year 2 guys that are playing summer league. Like year 1 was rough, but they go into year 2. Like that's how Brandon Ingram was. Like he looked dominant, even though he only played like 3 quarters because I think he rolled his ankle like his first summer league game. But like he looked dominant. You know, you want that's what I like to see, man. Jabari Smith looked like the best player on the court every time he stepped on it in summer league. So hopefully that translates. I hope Jalen Green's development doesn't get hurt too much by adding all of these guys into their rotation. I hope that doesn't hurt him. But those are 2 guys I'm pretty high on. Like I'm expecting them to have nice years 2 and 3.
Yeah, him showing like just that he was too good to even be there on the summer league court. That was really nice to see, and it's honestly just almost a recurring trend with this sophomore class that like the hype is not what it should be. Like all those top guys, the hype for these sophomore seasons is not even close for Paolo. For Chet's kind of a rookie and a sophomore, but I'll include him. And then like Jabari and all of them from top to bottom.
I don't think we discussed KBJ at all. We're going to keep it that way.
The only minutes he needs to get is out sweeping the floor, and that's about it, I think.
Real. But like that's true, Gabe. Like Paolo, realistically, could be an all-star this year.
100% he could.
Like I don't think that's crazy. Like I wanted to have him on my power forwards list like so bad. But I feel like that was projecting a little too much.
He made 2 power forwards lists. Last night we did it on the Kia Threes broadcast, and I think Jelson had him at 10 and Garrett had him at 8.
I think he was like my first or second name. I gotta double check. Power forwards.
Yeah.
Which people moved up a little bit because we had AD on the centers list, but
right.
Paolo was my very first name off, but he could really be an all-star this year. And it's like, does anybody care other than like the real degenerates on NBA Twitter like myself? Probably not. Like us,
probably not,
care,
man.
But others, like, no, they don't really care. Maybe it's because it's Orlando. Maybe it's because Wemby and Scoot are getting all the hype as the new guys. Like, I don't know, but Paolo could really be an all-star this year.
Yeah, I will give credit though. No one's talking about it, but there might be some expectations to it. I put a poll similar to that out on my channel about a week ago about who's most likely to make their first All-Star team this season, and I had Paolo, Brunson, and Bridges. Brunson was at 38%, Paolo was at 32%, and Bridges was at 30%. So the fact that Paolo was above Bridges to me speaks volumes, considering how good of an end of the season Bridges had.
I'm surprised that Brunson was above. You said Brunson was above both of them?
Brunson was at 38%, correct. All of them were above 30, so it was very close. But
I said earlier in this episode that like I think there's a good chance that Brunson's an all-star next year, but
it's tough in the East.
I'd have to see the position breakdowns.
If you're just thinking, well, the Harden competition is gone, even though he didn't make it last season, but that's still another name that's always putting up all-star caliber numbers. Trae Young, Halliburton, Brunson, like, is he the third, like, guard up? So I'm thinking, after that, you get, like Drew Holiday, like, Cade, who has to prove it.
Drew Holiday's not making
LaMelo might have, like, a case if he stays healthy.
A case, yeah. But
Drew Holiday is my biggest stock that I'm selling right now. I think he's about to be washed. I'm just saying it now.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Trying to think of names, bro. Beal's gone, even though he hasn't been an All-Star for a couple years.
Maxey could take a jump, but I'd take Brunson
Maxey
over
gone.
him.
Yep.
I'd love for Markelle to get in, but that means he's in over. That means the Magic probably have 3 guys, which seems unlikely. I mean, if they're a top 3 seed, maybe, but I mean, I don't know if
Markelle would
that's
have to
happen.
take he would have to take an insane MIP type jump.
Yeah, he would. He would have to
get up into the
jump.
20s, 8 assists.
We need the Markelle Most Improved Player campaign.
Kyrie, Harden not being Eastern Conference guards anymore makes it a little more open.
Definitely. That'll change if Dame comes over, but
Zach LaVine, got to think about him.
Yeah, LaVine has a shot.
Shit, the Raptors are getting 3 All-Stars next year, so don't even worry about it.
No chance.
Dame, Siakam, and Scotty, bro, that's easy money.
Scotty ain't making the All-Star game, bro.
Bro.
I'll be honest, at this rate, I'd be surprised if Siakam makes it next year.
Donovan Mitchell. Forgot about Mitchell, man.
Yeah.
Damn. See, it is tough. I'm going to be honest. That's 4 or 5 guards that are legit All-Stars. Darius Garland's been an All-Star.
Corrupted that would fail.
Bro said I'd be surprised if Pascal Siakam. That's crazy, bro. He's the
I just don't think our record's going to be good enough. You got to think about all the forwards in the East next year. We've already talked about Mikal Bridges and Paolo. We got JB and JT. We got Jimmy Butler. We got Joel Embiid. We got Giannis. Those are all front court guys that immediately come to mind. Julius Randle's going to be in competition. DeMar's going to be in competition. Chris Middleton, if healthy, although Siakam probably gets in over him. And
that's about it. Yeah,
that's probably the guys that he's running with.
That's a lot.
It's going to be tough if we're not a competitive team.
No, Pascal's averaging 27 and 9 or some shit like that. He probably gets in.
Yeah, but I mean, last year he was playing great basketball, and he was an injury replacement. And we weren't terrible, but we were at least hovering around 500.
Bro said OG, Gary Trent, and Scotty ahead of Paolo. Bro, I promise you, none of them are putting up better numbers than Paolo this year.
Well, I guess Darko's going to have them boys playing well.
Yeah, if they're playing that good, they're probably a top 3 seed, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. I'm trying to have some faith, but I'm going to be honest, I'm way too realistic of a fan. I don't give myself faith.
Randall is never making it again.
Hey, man, they said that after the 2022 season.
Gabe needs to see
back.
the mascot.
We need it, bro.
Happy Rap only saw 1 second of screen time today, man.
It's because we were talking about Dame to the Raptors, so it's genuinely some happy Raptors talk. I was a bit less depressed this week about my favorite team.
This is true. It's not as bad, but next week is our Eastern Conference predictions, so might be a little bit less happy potentially.
You know who my 1 seed is?
Potentially.
The Pacers?
The Knicks.
The Pistons.
Nah, they're my 4 seed. Literally the whole country of Canada.
Man, that would make my day. Having 2 guys in my backcourt who can actually shoot the ball. We had 1 year of that when we won the title, and we have not had it since.
Respect Malachi.
And we didn't have it before that because DeMar couldn't shoot the 3 either.
Malachi Flynn is 2 years away from being 2 years away.
Have the Raptors ever? I'm trying to think of when our last backcourt was that actually had 2 good 3-point shooters.
Probably
over a decade ago.
Did they never start
outside of the championship team?
Did they not start Lowry and Fred together ever?
No, they did.
They did, yeah. They did. They did for a year, yeah. But I'm just thinking post that 2-year span.
Before that, shit.
Calderon. Go way back.
Yeah. Now, for a second, I felt like everybody was at least some part of
the world was Jose. Who was Jose running with?
Jose was running with a lot of dudes.
Did
What's
the
it?
Capono
like
was
Morris
Capono ever a
Peterson
consistent
and
starter?
shit.
Was Capono a Raptor? Am I imagining that? I might be.
Respect Matt Thomas, Utah Jazz legend.
Bulls legend. The
Is that
Crimson Fleet. Hey man, I tried to buy the Malachi hype, and he let me down more than the Kill Alexander Walker did.
Yeah, I never bought into the Malachi hype. It could not be done.
Did if Jose and Capono ever started together, that is the best shooting backcourt in Raptors history.
Oh, that is wild. That speaks volumes.
For better or for worse.
Capono did start 12 games for us in the 2008-09 season, so
Hey man, and that's
There
the
was
year
a-
Jose shot like 98% from the free throw line.
yeah, that would have been
man.
the year.
Not taking it over Fred and Kyle, or even if they were starting like Kyle and Norman Powell at any point.
I guess. Get a corner, my guy. Anthony Parker. Wow.
Call that man a
Russ.
circle the way he is not hitting the corner, bro.
Anthony Parker, bro. That's funny. Who is
Man,
Jorge Carbosa? Who?
that's a name I've not heard in a long time.
George Garbosa.
I remember like fucking Sonny Weems, Raptors legend.
Sonny Weems.
You Weems,
Man.
my team player.
That man really started. Garbosa really started a full season for us, and then played 7 games and never played in the league again.
Damn,
Like,
I don't even.
that's how bad we were. Like, bro started a full season as a rook to just never play
no
again.
idea who that is. Why shooting the rock like
He's the outgoing president of the Spanish Federation of Basketball. Actually, funnily enough.
Good for him.
Nah. This is
Didn't like Linus Kleza play for the Raptors?
Yes, he did. He played for us for a couple of years, I think.
Bro,
Sadly,
You guys are
that's
just
a name
saying
I'm way
stuff.
too familiar with. Sadly,
you could be saying fake names and I like fully believe.
it was probably only like 2 years, but I feel like he played for us forever. I played 3 years.
Linus
Really?
Kleza was an okay NBA player. He was all right.
He was okay. He was
Tracy
okay.
Murray.
Oh,
Tracy
man.
Murray. That name sounds familiar. That name does sound familiar.
Latavius Murray's better. So is DeMarco.
God, them Raptors teams were so pathetic, bro.
They were rough, man. But that's probably a sign before I get too deep down this rabbit hole and get sad. We need to wrap things up.
Justice for Chris Bosh, man. He had to deal with too much.
Death taxes in the last
Justice for
10 minutes
Bosh,
of 3 Point Weekly being the most random NBA players being named.
It's just tradition at this point, man. Tradition of the offseason.
Dwight Bikes is one of the best Raptors guards of all time. Remember that.
CJ Miles for life.
One of the Raptors guards of all time, that is for sure.
He's a guard.
But we do appreciate everyone for tuning out again this week. Appreciate the support. Appreciate the comments in chat throughout. That wraps up kind of the dead of the offseason. Next week, we come back with our Eastern Conference standings predictions. We're only, despite it seeming not that close, only a few weeks away now from the heart of it. So we'll have our predictions coming up for the next few weeks. So be sure to stay tuned for those. But if you did enjoy and you haven't hit the like button yet, be sure to do that. Be sure to hit the subscribe button. So we'll have a few more videos rolling out through the week before we give those Eastern Conference predictions next week. But until then, we hope you guys have a good rest of your week, and we'll see you guys then. Peace.